He was always the target of ridiculed, bullied, and humiliated endlessly by his classmates, friends, and even his very own doctor, advising him to stop dreaming of becoming a player since he has no magic and he would never awaken any skill. Yet even with all the humiliation, our boy never gives up on his dream. He trains every day and tries to find every opportunity to awaken as a player. However, one day, as he is secretly sneaking around near a newly awakened dungeon, he accidentally encounters a dying cute girl. Because of his kind-hearted nature, he decides to save her, not knowing she is the demon lord. But in her gratitude, she infuses all of her magic into him and regresses him into the past to turn him into the most powerful death-returning demon lord in existence. But before all this happens, let's start the story from the beginning. The scene starts with the return of the conquerors of the Baal dungeon. A confident blonde strides down the red carpet and is welcomed by a swarm of reporters who are basically obsessed with her and her achievements. The Baal dungeon is a tough one after all, as no one could clear it before she came along. Our star blonde bathes in the glory of all the praise she's receiving. She's extremely confident and doesn't hide it. Her full name is Orimachi Sakurao, the guild master of the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild. She's a grand sorcerer, an S rank, and in 3rd place no less, with a special skill called the Nine-Tailed Fox. So yeah, she's definitely powerful. The reporters glaze her even more, claiming that she just might be able to clear the Lulu Heart dungeon, the first and most difficult dungeon in the history of dungeon clearing, and the ultimate goal of all players. She scoffs at this, though, and clarifies that she has no interest whatsoever in the goal of all players, for she only hunts for herself. After this, she turns and takes her leave, just as confident as she had arrived, ignoring other questions from the reporters, like the whereabouts of the previous guild leader and the conflict between Russian players. Meanwhile, our MC lies in his room, watching all of this on the news on his phone. It's about time for his part-time job, and this time around, he is transporting supplies to the dungeon. He then recalls what the blonde diva said on the news, about her only clearing dungeons for herself, and seriously doubts it. Our protagonist also has dreams of someday becoming a player and challenging a particular dungeon tower. It was the first dungeon to appear in his world, and is currently the most difficult by far, as no one has been able to clear it. This dungeon, which continuously omits obvious deadly stay-away auras, is known as the Lulu Heart dungeon. When he was much younger, our MC had always watched the news, where they announced new players, and always thought he'd someday be one of them. But life had other plans for him. Unfortunately, he was deemed skill-less by his doctor, and as one, he would never be able to enter dungeons, talk less of clearing them. This meant he was quite useless, and other players made sure he was aware of that fact. They downgraded and bullied him, as if his lack of talent wasn't enough torture. Even his own friend strongly advised him to give up on his dream of being a player. He made it clear that he had no hope of reaching his goal, as he was completely useless with no talent. Skill-less is a term used to describe people who can't access skills and therefore are unable to become players. There's a good reason why these kinds of people aren't allowed in dungeons. Most of them die, and the rest go missing. Either way, they're basically cooked and don't even stand a chance. That is why the rule was made. Deep down, our boy knows that he's obviously not one of the chosen ones, but he still can't bring himself to give up. So, he works part-time jobs related to dungeons as his own small way of contributing. It might be dumb, but it's his life. He even bought a sword, which was obviously a stupid purchase since he knows he's never going to use it. That's what he thought anyway. Suddenly there's an intense earthquake, followed by loud warnings and panic. A dungeon break just occurred. A dragon comes out of the Paimon dungeon with its fiery fury. But that's not all. Other monsters begin to descend from other dungeons. One looks like a nun, and the other a lamb monster. Everyone begins running for their lives. The warning system keeps announcing more and more monsters, to the terror of the people trying to escape. Soon, our protagonist is being chased down by the lamb monster. He tries to use his sword to defend himself, but he's no good at it, and so it breaks. So much for that idea. Just as he is about to take his last breath, a golden light swoops in and saves him in the nick of time. The scarlet leaf flash slashes the monster, leaving a brilliant gold after effect. The owner of this move asks the citizen she just saved if he is hurt. She is an S rank, in 8th place, and also part of the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild. She is a swordmaster, with Eye of Truth as her special skill, and her name is Orimachi Saira, another blonde beauty. Amid all the chaos, our boy manages to thank his savior, and she advises him to run away. Even though he really wants to do something to help the current situation, the harsh reality is that the only thing he can do right now is run. He accepts his fate and takes to his heels in regret. After some running, he realizes that he can't outrun the monsters, and decides to use the alleyways to maneuver the city-turned battleground. It is then that he spots a girl on the floor, bleeding to death. She weakly asks if he's human, but he either doesn't hear her or totally ignores her. He deduces that she needs a hospital ASAP, but with how severe the bleeding is, there isn't enough time. What he refuses to do is run away again and do nothing. He tries to help her, but she rejects it. There is no way she's accepting help from a mere human, and she lets him know her disgust. But our boy isn't hearing any of that crap. Despite her struggles, he gets the weak girl on his back and gives her a free piggyback ride across the city. Things are getting wild, and the dragon releases a powerful attack on the city. The impact of the blast completely blows our boy and his new friend away. Quite unfortunately for them, they've caught the attention of the dragon. The dragon stares into the eyes of our terrified MC and looks away. Apparently, it's not interested in him for now. He wants to question it, but decides to just take his luck and move on, finding and carrying the girl. The girl wonders why he keeps trying so much when it's quite obvious that they're both going to die there. He agrees with this completely, but still refuses to do nothing. He is determined to do everything he can to get them out of this predicament. This inspires her, and she makes a decision. She asks him if he wants to change this situation, and he agrees. He would save the world if he could, but he can't, so he'll just have to settle for saving her. With that, the girl starts to bestow something on him. She hates the idea of having to rely on a human, but unfortunately, he is the only vessel available. She tells him that she'll give him a second chance, in exchange for his soul. Our protagonist is confused, but what she is planning to give him is a restart. She asks for a name, and he tells her, so she begins. She reveals that she's actually the demon lord Luluheart, the ruler of the Luluheart dungeon. She entrusts the data of her precious dungeon to our MC, and before he can ask any questions, he is sent back in time. And so it begins. In recognition of his vigilant deeds, saving a girl even in his powerlessness, the Round Table, whoever that is, grants him a skill, but that doesn't work, as our MC, Kanzaki Yukari, lacks the necessary talent or casualty required to manifest a skill. After a quick review, the Round Table decides to make an exception and grant him a skill anyway. His new skill is called Lostman, and its class is unknown. A skill that loses oneself, a tribute to his resolve to lose everything. It is done. He wakes up on his bed. Everything is totally normal, as if he wasn't just contemplating death a few minutes ago. Except, everything isn't normal, as he hears the news from his tablet, stating a story that happened 6 years ago. He checks his phone, and sure enough, the date and time match the news. Just then, the girl who had been looking after him notices that he's awake. It's the same girl he had tried to rescue, but smaller. Our dude is terribly confused. Some years ago, the mother of all dungeons, the Luluheart Tower, suddenly appeared in Shinjuku. After that, other smaller ones started popping up here and there. In these same dungeons were dangerous beasts and supernatural monsters. On the other hand, extraordinary skills started to manifest, and those who could awaken them emerged. They were called players. These skills granted the players superhuman abilities and power-ups that defied the very laws of physics. Now back to our MC and his new demon lord friend. He is still confused as hell, so she explains to him that he actually regressed. He basically went back in time to roughly 6 years prior to the incident and is now in his younger self. She's proud to say that it's only possible due to her magic. He almost doesn't believe it, but it's the truth. She had lost most of her magic power in the process, though, which is why she is in a smaller form that is only visible to him. It is then that it starts to make sense to our young hero. She upright tells him that she has done her part, and it is his turn to follow suit. His job is to stop the dungeon break from ever happening in the first place. Our protagonist Yukari is still quite confused, so his demon friend Luluheart explains to him that the dungeon break was actually caused by some other demon lords coming together to invade her dungeon because it has the most concentration of magic power. Because she was way too powerful for one person to beat, they had to work together to stop her. But if her new friend can manage to conquer all the dungeons before that happens, then they can prevent that future from ever happening again. Quite regrettably, Yukari admits that although he really wants to help, he's too weak to actually do anything. He is a skill-less who has never even set foot in a dungeon before. That doesn't really matter to her though, as she's way more interested in his resolve and will to fight for her sake. Besides, all humans are the same to her, so it really makes no difference whatsoever. She promises to train him till he becomes the overpowered player she needs to surpass all human limitations and protect her precious dungeon. They finally arrive at an F-ranked dungeon. Our boy is more nervous than excited. He's curious about the training, and he's about to find out what it actually entails. With the wave of her hand, she gathers a very powerful purple wave of magic and hits a very confused Yukari with it. She just infused her mana directly into his magic circuits, and it is taking our boy more than a few minutes to recover from that. This should give even a skill less like him the ability to sense magic. Our boy can't understand this though, so she tries to explain to him that acquiring a skill made him obtain a magic circuit, and she controlled the mana that is currently surging through him. However, Yukari can barely concentrate on what she's saying. The pain and confusion are just too much. He is losing his mind and his consciousness. If only he could make the pain go away. And that is all he needs to activate his skills. The conditions are met, and the request to lose pain is accepted. His unique skill grants him the ability to lose pain, but only for a limited time since the skill is only level 1. Just like that, the pain is gone just as suddenly as it came. He finally begins to notice the mana circulating throughout his body, and it actually feels amazing. For a player, mana is basically everything. Before this, our boy couldn't even sense mana, and now it's flowing through his body. It's exhilarating. Lulu Heart swoops in and encourages him to keep losing things that will hold him back, and he'll be unstoppable. She continues with her lesson and tells him to try gathering mana in his legs. That would give him superhuman physical ability. He tries this, but fails. The mana disperses as he tries to gather it. She's not worried for some reason, saying that his ability never mattered to her, and this makes our hero believe she's actually kind. How wrong he is. Just as he's trying to figure her out, something appears from behind him. It's a freaking orc. Before our dude can realize what is actually chasing him, it is already hot on his heels. He had thought since they were still at the entrance, he was safe. What he didn't know is that having a powerful mana like that of the demon lord Lulu Heart flow through you is like pouring appetizing sauce on an already appetizing meal for monsters. Of course, Lulu Heart already knew this, which is why she didn't really bother before. She knew he was going to learn one way or the other. Our MC is running for his life. He has never fought before and has absolutely no idea what to do. Meanwhile, our demon lord just follows him around, having a teacher's snack as if someone isn't about to die in front of her. The orc finally attacks, and in that split second, our MC manages to pull it off. He gathers the mana in his legs and super sprints, dodging the attack by a hair. It is just for a moment, but he has managed to gain some distance between him and his chaser. He actually starts to gain some confidence in his abilities, but that is short-lived. He looks up in horror, only to see other orcs just waiting to have their own turn at him. Before he can blink, one takes a swing at him, and he already knows it's over. Soon, he's nothing but a solar stain on the ground. He just died. The round table comes again, as per protocol, to retrieve his skills. But Lulu Heart is not about to let go of the only hope she has of protecting her future tower from destruction. She destroys the protocol and prevents his skills from being removed. Her contract with him allows him to return to 1 hour before his death. He wakes up in panic, and our demon lord calmly greets him, welcoming him back to the world of the living. She then moves on to continue with her lesson, as if nothing happened. She injects her mana into him just like before, and the whole thing replays, both the pain and confusion. But with his skill Lost One, his ability to lose pain activates, and the pain soon fades. He's left with just confusion, but Lulu Heart reminds him of what happens immediately after her mana is infused in him. It's orc feeding time. Our young hero is rightly confused as to what just happened. As he runs for his life again, she explains to him that he did, in fact, get reduced to a splat of minced meat by an orc, but because of her death return contract that she has with him, he will always return to the living 1 hour before he dies. Our boy is still trying to wrap his head around this, but she tells him not to think too much about it. All he needs to know is that until he successfully stops the dungeon break, he will keep returning after he dies. There isn't an ice's chance in hell she's just going to sit back and watch her dungeon's future savior die like that. While she observes, she notices that his reaction time has improved. Death definitely has an impact on him, but if he really wants to get stronger, he can't keep dodging and hiding. He actually has to counterattack eventually. He knows this as well. She then reveals a small hint to help him. She tells him that the thing that connects the magic overflowing in this world is his soul. All he needs is a strong will to wield this power, whether it's a strong desire to save the world or a mere wish to become stronger. All he needs is that resolve. What he wants is to stop the dungeon break from ever happening and to get stronger, and that is exactly what he's going to do. He quits hiding and goes in for an attack. Infusing mana into his arms and weapon, he lands a critical hit and slashes through one of the orcs. He did it. He just killed his first monster. Lulu Heart is proud of him. She had planned to have him die about 100 times first so he could get used to the pain of her magic in him, but because of his skill giving him the ability to nullify pain, that saved her the trouble. It is then that he realizes that it's actually a demon lord who's training him, not a normal being. There's no time to rest though, as other orcs charge towards him. He uses the magic now coursing throughout his body to move quickly and strike down each orc. He can hardly believe how fast he is moving. In an hour, he has defeated 10 orcs, and even Luluheart has to commend him on that one. He believes that if he keeps this up, he will undoubtedly get stronger. Just then, they hear a scream coming from deep within the dungeon. There's a dude with a knife walking toward a helpless lady with obvious murderous intent. The lady, with 2 of her now dead companions beside her, tries to stand her ground, but it's quite obvious how this is going to go. She is Sierra, an F rank that's a member of the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild. The man compliments her eyes before he goes for the kill. Our hero intercepts this attack, but it doesn't connect with its target, so he tries to hold the murderer back, and Sierra reveals that he's actually a serial killer with a knack for killing beginner players. She begs him to run away, and Yukari realizes that it's the same girl that saved him with the golden effects move before he went back in time. He definitely has a reason to save her now, but unfortunately, he is not winning this battle. He's weak from his battle with the orcs, and his opponent isn't a small fry either. The killer uses an ability, Wave of Terror, and attacks Yukari with it. This initiates fear in our hero. It also dulls his skills and prevents him from moving. With that, the killer easily lands a critical hit, stabbing our MC right in the gut. Once he's done with that, he moves back to the girl to continue from where he stopped. He explains to our bleeding hero that he just wants to know what skills are really about as he stabs and murders the girl in front of Yukari. He plans to dissect them all later and study them like a biology experiment. Our hero really wants to do something, but he's way too weak and basically dying. The girl that saved him before he regressed is being murdered in cold blood right before him, and he can't do squat about it. It's because he's too weak and powerless. He needs more power. He's gonna have to do something about that next time. He dies by the blade of the killer, and just as expected, is revived an hour before his death while he is still with Luluheart. He's way more calm this time around and makes a request of Luluheart. He wants to become stronger, no matter how many times he has to die. Bro really wants to take down that psycho. Luluheart, of course, has no problem with it. It's what she is planning to do anyway. She honestly couldn't care less about the girl he's trying to save, but it's as good a motivation as any. She will personally whip him into shape. Meanwhile, at the battle between the killer and Sierra, he reveals that the reason why he's attacking her is because the dungeon is running short on monsters, so he'll take his sweet time breaking her. As he is about to land an attack, Yukari intercepts him yet again. But for the rest of them, it's for the first time. Sierra tries to act tough and tells him to run just like before, but our boy isn't hearing any of that crap. He's dead set on taking down this jerk. He dies again, obviously. Before he regressed, he had heard about the serial killer that liked attacking beginner players, but in his timeline, Sarah was never attacked to that extent by him. He figures that it must have been because he came here and lured all the orc monsters to him. That's what gave the killer a chance to strike Sierra and ultimately change the future. He can't do anything about that now, for his revival has its limits. He can only revive 1 hour before his death, and if it hasn't been up to an hour before he dies again, he'll only revive back to the previous point of revival. Basically, if he dies now, survives for only 30 minutes, and dies again, he will regress back 30 minutes, not 1 hour. What this implies is that any time beyond his 1 hour limit is lost time, and he can never go back there. So he can't change her fate by leaving the monsters in that dungeon alone. If only he had finished the orc sooner, he would have also prevented this. He is just too weak. He dies again and again, but keeps on going back to save the girl. Throughout his battles, Luluheart keeps advising him on how to win, telling him to predict his enemy's movements and control his mana well, but he keeps on dying, way more than just a few times. Sierra has to ask why he is sacrificing so much, even though she doesn't know the full story. At some point, even our Demon Lord trainer has to ask him what his deal is. He has nothing to lose. So why not go all out, even when it comes to his very life? That is true resolve. If he gives up now, a dungeon break that will hurt a lot of people will occur, and that would suck. He would rather suffer now than watch people die in the future. Luluheart is quite taken aback by this. All her time as Demon Lord, she has never seen a player give a horse behind about other players in need, but he is different. Even the killer has to commend his opponent. To him, this is the first time he's facing off against our boy, but it still isn't enough, for he claims to have more commitment than him. This hurts our hero's ego, and he starts to doubt himself. But even with that, he still stands strong and refuses to give up. Lulu Heart is honestly surprised with his progress and decides to give him a helping hand in the form of a hint. She advises him to chin up and be more confident in his abilities. He still sees himself as that weak man he was before he regressed and refuses to believe that he has actually gotten a lot stronger since. He could have given up and left the girl to die, but he didn't. He keeps coming back time after time again. He doesn't think of running, not even once. That is strength. She admits that when she, a demon lord, acknowledges his strength, he shouldn't feel any less. Suddenly, it becomes clear to Yukari. He can see and predict the killer's moves now. He dodges and attacks with everything in him. He stands a chance now more than he ever has. His demon lord trainer pushes him to accept that strength and stop chickening out. True to that, our boy totally turns the waves of the fight in his favor. He can easily dodge and counterattack now, and even lands a hit. The killer can't keep up anymore. He definitely notices that he isn't fighting a newbie. He's shocked at the fact that he's being pushed back by someone who appeared weaker than him. Yukari then goes in for a critical attack and uses his skill to nullify his fear in advance, leaving an opening on purpose. The killer doesn't know this, of course, and takes the bait. His skill, Wave of Fear, can only be activated if his opponent leaves an opening. He takes this chance and tries his skill, but it doesn't work. Our boy has planned for this outcome in advance. This catches the killer off guard, but the opening is still there, so he uses that to land a hit. Unfortunately for him, our boy accounts for that too and uses a skill to nullify his pain. He then traps the killer's blade in his gut, and this horrifies him. He's confused and overwhelmed. Our MC is not playing with him anymore. So that's how the predator suddenly becomes the prey in this battle, for it's only a matter of time before our MC lands a critical hit on his opponent, slashing him with one clean swing. The killer is in disbelief, struggling to come to terms with the fact that he has lost to a weakling like our MC. But he did lose, and he might have died a few dozen times, but our MC is the only one standing at the very end. After the whole showdown is finally over, backup arrives from the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild and treats all their injuries, including Sayara's friends who apparently are not dead, by the way. She comes to apologize to our young wannabe hero, but it's nothing to him, so she instead shows gratitude. Lulu Heart is also proud of him. It might have taken a lot of time and effort, but he did it. This brings him to tears, which Lulu Heart doesn't get. If he's going to change their impending future, then he'll have to get way stronger and beat way scarier people. He's going to have to get stronger, surpass even S rank, and reach an overpowering Demon Lord class before he's able to stop the dungeon break. He will be known as the Demon Lord level player. He doesn't totally get it, but agrees with it anyway. He then reassures that he's going to get stronger, even despite Lulu Heart's hellish training warnings. The next day, at the Japan Player Association, our boy Yukari goes to have his stats checked out. The lady directing him is more than surprised at our boy's feats. Hunting orcs and defeating a serial killer that lied about his real rank so as to be paired up with beginners to make his hobby easier. All that before even registering as an official player is unheard of. She can hardly believe it's true. As our boy steps up to have his stats checked by the classic magic measuring ball device, he is immediately promoted to E rank, having all his stats upgraded as well. His mana capacity, magic circuits, and skill level are all increased. Sweet. This means he can finally get to choose a class. Outside, Yukari stands awkwardly, waiting until Sayara shows up behind him, surrounded by bodyguards. He's surprised by this and honestly has to stammer a bit, but then remembers that before the regression, Sayara is actually a big deal, being the daughter of Oromachi conglomerate. Along with her sister, she is one of the top S-rank players, ranking 8th in the whole world with her badass mental type skill. The Eye of Truth is one of her greatest strengths, granting her the ability to see all lies and trickery. She can also see faults and weaknesses in battle, which is a very neat trick to have up your sleeves, especially when handling tough opponents. She thanks him again for saving her life and that of her guildmates. He had actually later found out that that was also her first raid as well, but she handled the situation quite well considering the circumstances. She is so glad and starts getting a little clingy, and our boy is not a big fan of it. After that, they decide to grab a bite while they discuss more about job classes. They also agree to get on with selecting their job classes today. Right, so she explains that basically job classes are like titles or occupations that help classify players. There are 3 broad types of job classes: physical, magical, and mental. Basically, every job class must fall into one of these types. Physical includes job classes like warriors and thieves. Magical includes sorcerers and priests, while mental includes summoners and alchemists. Before the regression, our boy was kinda an ability geek, always researching about abilities. Sarah had chosen the class Swordmaster, which gave her the unique ability Counter, and paired with her skill, the Eye of Truth, it made a mad combo and basically a foolproof battle weapon with 100% accuracy. She was basically cheating at that point. There is also something called class compatibility. A person's class is determined by their personality and skills, and matching with the right job class that fits your skills will mean more power and efficiency. Get it wrong and you'll end up as a jack-of-all-trades, master of none. She advises him to be mindful of what job class he chooses, and goes on to choose hers first. Our boy wonders what kind of job class would go well with his awfully weird skill, and Luluheart is busy taking note of all of this. After a while, she comes back and reveals that her skill actually gave her 4 job classes to choose from. And this shocks him, as that is only left for geniuses. But what shocks him even more is that out of her options, she chooses the S-rank job class Maid. She could have gone with Paladin or even Swordmaster for heaven's sake. But nah. It just had to be the Maid. The Maid class basically grants its holder unique and elegant techniques combined with the power to help her master succeed. It would dominate the battlefield with moves enshrined in mystery and history, controlling everything from the shadows. Welp, there goes the version of her he had met before the regression. She explains that she just wants to stand toe-to-toe with brave people like him, and he is just glad that she thinks of him in that way. Finally, it's his turn to go choose a class. He is excited about it, as he had never even dreamed of doing something like this before the regression. As he touches the measuring ball, the system reacts and starts to analyze his skill in order to provide him with appropriate job class options. But of course, there is an error. At this point, it shouldn't surprise you any time we're dealing with our MC. The system resumes and attempts to try again, and succeeds this time. It grants him the job class Soul Eater, a job that grants him the ability to devour souls, consuming their strength and commanding them as well. The downside is the risk of being swallowed by the darkness, but we'll talk about that later. The Soul Eater class grants him unique abilities like Soul Lost, Soul Trail, Soul Devour, Soul Harvest, and that's all he can get with his current level. This is shocking to our boy, as he has never even heard of a class like that after all his years of geeking. He might have been shocked, but Luluheart is horrified. All those abilities were once hers. Did bro just steal her job class? Neither Yukari nor Luluheart could have predicted such an outcome. She can't believe her eyes, but it's all too real. Our boy has just stolen her job class and unique abilities, so she begins to wonder if the system has judged her as part of his ability. After he emerges, he reveals his new job class to Sierra, and she's taken aback by the whole situation as well. This gives Luluheart a devilish idea to make both of them battle each other, so she proposes a mock battle for our hero and Sierra to test their new job classes and unique abilities on each other. At the indoor arena, the two newly advanced players prepare for battle. Sierra dresses in a cute but freaky maid outfit to match her aesthetic. Luckily, our MC isn't a pervert, or it would be game over before the match even begins. The outfit excites her somehow, and that's apparently enough reason to throw what's left of her dignity out the window. People begin to flood the arena, gathering to watch. No one's going to miss the battle between two famous beginner players. The referee signals the start of the match, and they begin immediately. Although our boy is unsure, he tries out his first ability, Trial of the Soul, which boosts his magic power, but debuffs his stamina in return. This leaves our MC tired and panting as if he had just finished a marathon. Fortunately for him, his skill Lost Man swoops in to save the day, nullifying the debuff effect by simply losing it. Only now does our demon trainer admit she forgot to mention that her ability comes with certain drawbacks. How convenient. Sierra, being a good sport, waits for him to test out his skills, and once he is done, they begin fighting for real. Sierra gracefully swoops in for the first attack, using her ability Maid's Work Tool, which summons the tools she needs, to produce throwing knives that she hurls at her opponent. Our boy manages to deflect them, but she uses the opportunity to land a sword strike, which he is able to block as well. He is well aware of her ability to see through trickery, so he has to win this the good old-fashioned way, but she does not give him a chance to think, overloading him with multiple attacks coming one after another. He then uses his skill to nullify his fear and charges through her barrage of attacks to engage in close combat. However, she reacts and tries to defend, but his raw power is too much, and she gets pushed back. This causes the crowd to erupt with excitement as the two young players battle their hearts out. Our boy, bursting with magical power from his ability, goes in for another strike. Sierra is amazed by how strong and straightforward he is and barely manages to block his attacks. He then tries to push through her defenses, but she surprises him with another unique ability, Maid's Cooking Techniques, which basically makes her a Fire Lord Ozai, controlling flames like it is child's play. Our boy seriously wonders what the connection is between maids and fire, but does not have time to dwell on the matter as she attacks him head-on with fire, and he shifts into defense mode. He begins to see that she will soon become an S-rank player. But she is not done yet, as she switches back to throwing knives for close combat. He tries to deflect them but takes some damage when one of her knives connects. She immediately tries to use this opening, striking him at the exact spot where he was cut to bring him down. But he is ready and uses his skill to cancel out the pain so that when she attacks, he does not even flinch. This leaves her wide open and gives him the chance to land a blow. With moves now enhanced because his ability's condition, which is essentially his health dropping below 50%, is met, he begins his own barrage of attacks. Sarah quickly realizes that his power is still growing at this point in the battle and that she cannot keep up with such powerful attacks coming straight at her with no chance to react. He then lands a final critical slash that sends her flying across the arena, deciding the match. Sarah had already expected this outcome, and being the good sportsman that she is, she admits complete defeat. In his dumb humility, our boy attributes his victory to luck, even though it was obviously a clean victory. This encourages Sarah a little, although she's really frustrated by how weak she was compared to our boy. She really shouldn't fret about it too much though, because she is definitely not the main character in this story. She wonders how he was able to keep fighting despite her barrage of attacks, as if he had no fear for his life, and our boy admits to himself that she herself was actually quite impressive in that battle. She might be frustrated but isn't discouraged, as she promises to defeat him next time, but our boy knows that if there were to be a next time, he'd still drop her vanilla buns in a heartbeat. The next day, our boy and his teacher stand in front of a certain E-rank dungeon. She assures him that he can take it easy, as this is a low-level dungeon, and with that, he walks in, but not before she reveals a devilish smile that definitely can't mean anything good. Just as he walks into the dungeon, it surges with magic power and turns into a red dungeon. Workers around immediately begin to panic and notify the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild and Player Association. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, our MC is busy dancing tango with the night monsters, slashing and dodging as quickly as possible. He wonders why the monsters in a supposedly easy dungeon were as tough as that. If only he knew he wasn't in a normal dungeon. His teacher, on the other hand, is surprised at how well he's handling the situation, defeating the monsters in a berserk dungeon without dying even once. He is really beginning to exceed her expectations, and that's what she likes to see. She might just have to prepare even harsher training, and our boy doesn't know what the hell she's thinking. But the aura oozing from her malicious thoughts sends chills down his spine. His Soul Eater ability soon auto-activates, absorbing all the mana in the monsters he had killed. Soon, his body starts to fill up with mana, and his mana capacity and stats increase. Lulu Heart then explains that his ability converts the souls of the monsters into mana, which is then absorbed. Basically, the more he defeats, the stronger he becomes. He would expect nothing less than the previous owner of the ability to know so much about it. But that's only part one of the power. The second part is Soul Harvest, and it grants him the ability to acquire souls that he can call upon later. He uses it and gains the soul of one of the armored night monsters, the soul of a fallen knight now possessing an empty armor. The soul is like the core of a monster, which he can materialize by pouring mana into it. He does so, and boom, it appears. Bro just raised a soul. He literally took a page out of Sung Jin-woo's book. It's not just mere summoning, but the creation of life itself, and Lulu Heart assures him that it will get better as his mana improves. It is only now that he realizes that his teacher he was taking for granted was actually an overpowered demon lord. His new soldier joins him in battle, and they take down more monsters at the end, harvesting 2 more night monster souls for his collection. He can only summon them for a few minutes, and reckons that he has to raise his rank and mana capacity first. However, his teacher is very pleased with his character development. There is only 1 monster left, and let's just say he's a little bit bigger than the rest. No, actually he's much bigger, and looks way more frightening. It's his first boss fight, and he is ready for it. This one should be exciting. Meanwhile, our boy is becoming kind of famous, as news about him is reaching high places, like the guild master of the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild, aka Sierra's big sister. At the chambers of the guild master of the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild, Sakurako is informed by her secretary about the E-rank dungeon that had suddenly turned into a red dungeon due to mana overflow. She is so unbothered and casually orders that a team of B-rank players be sent out, whilst a certain Squad 4 stand by just in case. She then asks if any unfortunate soul tried paying the dungeon and visit, and the secretary reports that our MC is that unfortunate soul. The name sounds somewhat familiar, but he's still an E rank, and she doesn't hide the fact that she couldn't give a horse's backside whether he lives or dies. She then beckons on her assistant to bring her the usual, and by the usual she means a list of everyone who has been in contact with her little sister that day. Turns out that our cool, confident blonde is actually a lunatic with a sister complex, obsessing over people that make even the slightest contact with her. She then sees a picture of her beloved Sari on a casual date with our boy during lunchtime. It is then that she recognizes his name as the one who sparred against her sister in the indoor arena. She had obviously been too fixated on her sister's gorgeous moves to even notice her opponent. Words of a lunatic. Anyway, this just makes her hate him even more. Meanwhile, at the dungeon boss room, our boy is still going at it, fighting the boss for the 24th time. Luluheart, on the other hand, is starting to get bored, but our boy is definitely anything but. He seriously questions why the boss is this strong, and Luluheart knows it's because the boss has been supercharged by the dungeon's excess mana, but decides to keep this particular info to herself like the devil she is. You can't expect to get stronger if you don't challenge stronger opponents, but our MC was tricked into this particular fight. He was a dummy to trust her after everything she has put him through, and an even bigger dummy to only be realizing it this late in the game. His opponent is not giving him any time to be mad at Luluheart though. His attacks aren't causing much damage, and one slip-up means instant game over for him. Once his health drops beyond 50%, his ability auto-activates and charges him up with mana, whilst his unique skill simultaneously nullifies the pain brought upon by damage taken. Now he is supercharged and can actually take this battle seriously. He immediately summons one of his armored knight monsters, Sun Jin Woo style, and commands it to distract his opponent, focusing on defense alone while he strikes from behind. The idea is that there's no way his pawns can even scratch that thing, but hopefully they'd be able to keep it busy long enough for him to actually land a hit. The plan works, but once he lands his hit, the monster deviates attention to him, disregarding the pawn. With very quick thinking, our boy summons yet another pawn behind his opponent, whilst dodging lethal attacks. He then commands them to attack whenever he's the target, so as to draw its attention away and let him actually strike. The soldiers do as they are commanded, and the plan seems to be working. He had planned and developed the strategy over the countless times he had died and restarted, and is now getting way better at commanding his soldiers whilst fighting that even Luluheart has to commend him. She's so excited and is delighted that her student works best when put under pressure. And by pressure, she means reality situations that he'd have to die over 20 times to get out of. Back to our psycho blonde with a sister complex, she reckons that everything worked out in the end. A red dungeon appears when a dungeon has an overflow of mana, and its difficulty level skyrockets. No way the little insect that dared to speak to her sister could survive it. She believes that everyone who even comes near her sister should die, and her boot-licking, cake-kissing assistant agrees with her. But looking back on his battle with her sister, she begins to wonder what would happen if an E rank actually clears a red dungeon. Back in the dungeon, our boy uses his ability Soul Loss, and it grants him power in exchange for a fear debuff, which his unique skill nullifies. Then his health reduces beyond 10%. So his skill Abyss Soul hyperactivates, adding even more power. With this, he charges straight for the monster and lands a devastating slash that finishes it off, to the excitement of Luluheart. While this is happening, Sakurako realizes that if an E-class should manage to clear a red dungeon, not only would it be a groundbreaking historical event, but it would shake their whole ranking system like nothing they've ever seen before. Shortly after her brainstorming session, Sakurako gets shocked when she finds out that our boy actually did it. He cleared a red dungeon and did so single-handedly. She struggles to believe that a rookie player like him could clear a dungeon that's supposed to have drastically high monster strength and overall difficulty. He was also the one who took down Akizuki K, famous for hunting beginner players. Sakurako recalls that although his moves were quite amateurish in his mock battle with her sister, he didn't show the slightest fear of death in his eyes. He had them crazy eyes, and for some reason that excites her. She orders to dig up everything about this guy, and plans to recruit him if he is the real deal. And if so, she commands to give him the C-rank leader position, which is currently held by Shikimura. He is obviously not happy to hear this, but Sakurako is his boss and can discard him whenever she likes. But instead, she gives him a chance to redeem himself by proving that he's indispensable and more capable than their mystery rookie. She then entrusts the entire investigation to him. The man is obviously annoyed at this, and at our mystery rookie. Meanwhile, Sakurako had just set a plan in motion. Shikimura was so dumb and naive for falling into her trap. If he eliminates Yukari, then that's that, and if that's not the outcome, then they'd start preparing a welcoming party. Either way, the results will be in her favor. This should be interesting for her at least. One day later, some players assemble in front of the Vine Gate Rank D dungeon. Both our boy Yukari, Sierra, and 3 other members of the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild are to be participating along with some other side characters. Shikimura introduces himself as the leader of the group. He's a C rank in the Gladiator class with the skill, Strength Multiplied, and a member of the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild. The other 2 members are Suzumura, also a C rank in the Sage class with Mana Cost Reduction as a skill, and Kato Sho, a D rank in the Sorcerer class with Combo Bonus as a skill. Sierra doesn't hesitate to brag about how our boy cleared a whole red dungeon by himself, and his dumb humility comes in as he yet again attributes it to mere luck. Another busty babe walks into the picture. She's Yumeko, a C rank in the Assassin class, with the skill, Class Genius, and with the Sakurayu Guild. There's also a sleepy loli, Yuka, who's a D rank in the Enchanter class, with the skill, Wide Area Effect, and Taiyo, a big buff man who's a D rank, Warrior class with the skill, Hardening. He's a little down that he has been stuck at D rank for a long time, but our maid cheers him up. They're all chatting and getting to know each other, but someone has evil, malicious eyes on our boy Yukari. Shikimura is definitely cooking something not so appetizing. So fast forward to inside the dungeon, they're now faced with a horde of undead skeleton monsters, and they're getting overwhelmed. There are too many monsters, and the formation is starting to break. Loli Girl had thought this would be as easy as pie because the famous 100 Flowers Blooming Guild was on the team, but nope. The tanks can't keep the formation strong because of the poison breath attack the monsters are using. As he's thinking of a counter, a monster sneaks up behind him and tries to land a critical hit. He sees this coming but can't react quickly enough to dodge. He has already started to say his last prayers, but our boy manages to get to him and strikes the monster down just in time. He saves the man, and they walk hand in hand, him taking the back while the tank covers his blind spots. Shikimura sees this and yells at them to get back to formation, but they both totally ignore him and keep doing their own thing. Yukari then activates his Lost Man's Pain nullification and communicates with Lulu telepathically, asking her to pour her mana into him so as to draw the attention of the monsters. She obliges, but it's only after she's done lending her mana that she realizes he had called her a nickname instead of her full name. So while our boy is busy fighting monsters, she's complaining about a dumb name. He uses his ability to boost his mana as usual and goes in striking down monsters one by one. The poison breath soon becomes a nuisance to him, but then his skill helps him lose it. He gets totally purified from the poison and starts operating at 100%. Turns out he can also lose things afflicted on him by external forces. Neat. With that out of the way, he easily strikes down the rest of the monsters as they are nothing compared to the hell he faced in the red dungeon. The other players soon begin to notice our boy slice and dice monsters like cotton cheese. At the end, he basically clears everything, the whole monster flock by himself. But of course, his dumb humility comes in again, and he calls it a team effort when everyone just watched him take down an entire fleet of monsters by himself. Welp, everyone is just glad that at least it's finally over. Everyone but Shikimura. Somehow, he's even more annoyed than before. He remembers the words of his sister-obsessed boss, and that makes him grind his teeth. Shikimura then yells at our boy like a complete Karen for not following his commands, so Yukari tries to explain that his formation just wasn't working, and it would have affected some people, but he just won't hear it. He's way too angry at the boy to understand that bro is actually spitting facts. Unico steps up to defend our MC, and so Karen turns to face her, calling her out for using her popularity as a model influencer to act all high and mighty. This soon deteriorates into a huge quarrel about who gave who power and who's in charge, and tension buds up within the team. Our boy, being the calm dude that he is, suggests that they take a breather, and Sarah backs him up with the idea of reassessing their formation. Shikimura reluctantly agrees, and things begin to normalize. Our teacher is reminded of how much she hates humans, but what's worse than that is the fact that Yukari gave her a nickname. He tries to explain that it would just be easier to call on the battlefield, and she eventually lets the issue go, but in exchange, he has to properly harvest enough souls in this dungeon. Don't worry your cute little head, Lulu. Our young hero was already planning on doing just that from the start. At some point, the team reaches a point where the path divides into 2 paths. Shikimura is still very sore and annoyed that our boy was acting all bossy when he is the one that's supposed to be in charge. He's gonna have to step up his game if he's gonna prove that he's worth more than our MC. He speaks up and suggests that they split into 2 groups, beaming with smiles like a ray of sunshine as if he wasn't just contemplating murder a few minutes ago. Everyone except our MC seems to be on board with the idea. He fears that it may be way too risky to cut their team's strength in half while exploring an unknown territory. Shikimura totally ignores him though, and goes on to pick members of the first team, which includes himself, Suzumura, the other girl from his guild, the lolly, and the tank. Our boy tries to discourage his tank friend, but Shikimura is their leader and ultimately has the final say, but he promises to protect the team if everything goes wrong, giving off fatherly vibes. Shikimura then orders his other guild member, Kato, to join the other party and keep an eye on our boy for him. Lago doesn't understand what's so special about Yukari to get everyone so riled up like this. He really just wants to straight up go home. That makes two of us. So it's settled. The team is split into two parties, with Party A consisting of Shikimura, Suzumura, the lowly, and the tank, while Party B consists of our MC, our maid, the influencer, and Mr. I just want to go home. After a while, Party B encounters some monsters, which they immediately engage with. Our boy efficiently commands his team, and using a combination of his abilities and Lulu Heart's mana to draw the monster's attention, he does a great deal of damage. Our maid Sierra, on the other hand, uses her Fire Lord Ozai powers to attack. The influencer uses Sonic Blow to slice through her enemies, and the lazy one just shoots some ice crystals from one side. He's amazed to see that our boy is actually strong as expected of our MC. His decision-making is calm, straightforward, and spot on, and his moves are perfectly timed. Soon, they clear the entire horde and he obtains a soul, a Skull Guardian soul, to be precise. Sweet. They do a clean job of a horde of monsters quite easily, and all of them praise Yukari for it, even the lazy one. But then again, he of course has that dumb humility. Well, I guess he can't exactly tell them that he's only enthusiastic because he's hungry for more souls to collect. Talk about an awkward conversation. Sarah then suggests that they take a break since they've been going at it for 2 hours now, and they're about to do just that when they notice two figures approaching them. It's Shikimura and his girl pal Suzumura, just the two. He gives a quite ridiculous excuse that they had come back to get something they forgot, and they had decided to split up with the other two. Even a toddler could see how suspicious that sounds from a distance. Our boy really doesn't need Sarah's ability to confirm if he's lying or not, but turns to her anyway, and she confirms his suspicion. Shikimura promises that the two of them are perfectly safe, but Sierra detects another lie, which means that they are anything but safe. Before anyone can even process that information, our young hero leaps into action and runs to look for them, hoping desperately that they are still alive at the very least. As our young hero dashes, he asks Lulu Heart to help pinpoint the location of his missing party members by sensing their magic. She can't tell the exact location, but she can at least lead him to their general location. He never should have trusted that lying snake, and now his two party members are going to pay for it. Some monsters try to intercept and get in his way, but he quickly slices through them without stopping. He has more important things to do at the moment. He just hopes that he's not too late to save them. Just as our boy has feared, the tank and the lowly girl are both in grave danger and in immediate need of help. The lowly girl is already in snooze mode, and the tank is the only one left standing, although standing is about all he can do at the moment. Turns out that Shikimura's party had stumbled into the boss room first, and the lying snake grabbed his girl pal and ran with their tails between their legs, leaving only the tank and the lowly girl to deal with the boss. He couldn't even do the one thing that would have proven him better than our boy. What an absolute waste of space. So that happened, and now our tank has to protect the sleeping lowly girl. There's an overwhelming monster standing in front of him, and he can't even move his arms anymore. Welp, if it wasn't game over for him before, it definitely is now. Bro had already started to accept death, and was apologizing to his family for leaving too soon while preparing himself for the final death blow, except it never comes. Our young hero Yukari has made it just in the nick of time to intercept the attack and block it from connecting. With the last strength left in him, the tank warns Yukari to be careful before totally letting go and giving in to the unconsciousness that was way overdue, dropping to the ground like a limp ragdoll. He tries to draw the monster's attention away from his injured companions, and Lulu Heart warns him to be careful. She reveals that the reason why the other monsters were so easy to defeat was because this boss had been absorbing their magic power. With this new info, our boy gets ready for intense combat, activating his abilities and skills and not holding anything back from the start. Even with his multiplied strength, he's still barely managing to dodge the monster's attacks, missing deadly hits by a hair. He sneaks up and manages to land an attack, but that doesn't even move the monster an inch. They match blades, but the monster's is way too heavy, and his attacks aren't even leaving a scratch. The power gap between them is just too much. Mana. He needs more mana. He uses his Trial of the Soul ability to multiply his mana, but its side effects bring fear, which his unique skill loses. His combination of his skill and class ability just works together so well. The mental debuff, which is a side effect of the class ability Trial of the Soul, means that every time he uses it, some kind of mental defect will be applied. But his unique skill Lost Man counters this by losing the emotion associated with the defect and thereby nullifies the mental debuff. This makes them the perfect duo if you ask me. It's not enough though. He needs more and more, so he keeps using Trial of the Soul and Lost Man again and again, multiplying his ability each time and losing a particular emotion each time. He loses fear, then anxiety, then laziness. Just when his attacks are beginning to have an effect, and he's feeling confident that he can win this battle, something strikes him. Suddenly, everything goes blank white, and he can't move anymore. He totally didn't know that his unique skill Lost Man actually eats away at his humanity every time he uses it, and he had just lost a huge chunk all at once. The monster uses this chance to land a critical hit that sends him flying across the room. Lulu Heart notices something is wrong and comes to his rescue. She explains what exactly is going on and tries to get him to respond, but our boy can barely listen and is rapidly losing consciousness. She explains that if he can't overcome the Trial of the Soul, that he himself may cease to exist. Her voice isn't getting to him anymore, as he's already on his way to undergo the true Trial of the Soul, and he can't just regress his way out of this one either, because if he should respawn, the psychological damage would be irreversible. She's left with no other choice than to come down and fight in his stead. That monster should be honored that he gets the opportunity to battle Demon Lord Lulu Heart of the Lulu Heart Dungeon in all her glory. As he sinks deeper and deeper into the void, some of his worst memories begin to surface. Before his regression, he had been rejected, bullied, looked down upon, and discouraged even by his friends. The only thing he could ever do was run, no matter how desperately he wanted to do more. Those weren't very fun times. He wakes up to see he has been trapped in some sort of dimension. It's the Trial of the Soul, and the person who reveals this to him is none other than his evil clone. He stares in disbelief as a perfect copy of him stares him back in the eye. The Trial of the Soul is related to the Soul Eater class, the class of Demon Lord Lulu Heart. His evil clone continues to explain that its true form is the ability to forcibly amplify one's desire while increasing their soul and magic power, but someone has been ignoring it way too much, and that someone is our Yukari. Due to the Lost Man skill, he had conveniently been ignoring the other side of the Trial of the Soul ability, and now it is time for him to face it, the emotions he had discarded and his own value. But that's impossible, considering the fact that he has nothing and will continue to lose more if he continues on this path. Nothing can and will ever change. That's what the evil clone seems to really believe anyway. Meanwhile, back in the real world, the battle is still ongoing between the monster and Lulu Heart, and surprisingly, she isn't faring very well. She understood that she was now much weaker, but she had thought that she could have at least taken down such an insignificant monster. It's frustrating, but she still couldn't show any sort of weakness now, not just for the unconscious people currently taking a quick nap in the room, but for her reputation as well. She continues and draws the monster's attention. She has to fight for her student, for she is quite certain that he's going to overcome the Trial of the Soul. Speaking of Yukari, he's done hearing what this cheap dollar store version of himself has to say. He doesn't need anyone to tell him. He already knows his life has been wrong. He already knows that he's going to keep losing things as he goes on. But even so, it was his messed up life that led him to Lulu Heart. Everything that happened brought him to the one that gave him a second chance to save the world. So what if he keeps losing? So what if he had a wrong life? The choices he made weren't wrong, and that's all that matters. He will stop the dungeon break and save everyone. With that, he takes his evil clone by the face and reactivates his Lost Man skill, nullifying it along with every other negative emotion that was previously being nullified. But his proof of existence has dropped below a certain amount. The skill had consumed way too much, and that has to be fixed. So that's where his teacher comes in, accompanying him together in their one-way journey to the lost. She uses her magic essence to restore our hero's lacking existence, and it soon stabilizes while hers decreases. This breaks him free of the Trial of the Soul. In the real world, the monster is about to land a critical hit, but Lulu Heart isn't worried as she's well aware that her student has returned. He intercepts the attack as expected and saves her. She wants to inquire about his little journey of self-discovery, but that can wait until they're done playing with the monster. He has returned, so they can finally resume from where they stopped. Where was he again? Oh, he was about to whoop some monster arse. The cost of the power is great, but the effect makes it worth it. It's finally time they teach that overgrown nighthead a lesson. With an intense force, our young hero attacks the monster. It reacts and blocks the attack, but Yukari pushes through and takes one arm off with a clean slash. The monster screams and then charges at him with deadly intent, and our boy turns off his fear switch so that he can fight with everything that he's got. The battle is obviously different from before. He's no longer on the defensive, and his attacks are definitely going through. He swiftly dodges the monster's attacks and lands a hot kick, a move he had picked up from Sierra during their mock battle. The monster is not done yet, for it still has a trump card. It releases a massive amount of mana and initiates a mass summoning of small monsters, the kind they had fought before. Luluheart uses her mana to draw their attention and reveals that the boss monster's mana is almost finished, and encourages him to push through. So he immediately starts, summoning his own soldiers from his collection. Bet the monster thought it was the only one who could summon an army. With that, they enter the final and most intense stage of the battle. Our boy faces off with the boss while his army deals with the other monsters, and Luluheart keeps drawing their attention to keep them from distracting him. Soon, Luluheart's mana runs out, and she fades out of the battle, back into only existing in our boy's mind. So it's left for him to finish up here and clear the garbage. He then puts every ounce of strength into his final attack and lands a devastating hit, cutting through the enemy with one clean slice. Some moments later, the rest of the party finally makes it to the boss room. How convenient that they show up right after our OPMC has cleared all possible dangers. They are shocked to find out that he actually beat the boss monster single-handedly. Sarah, on the other hand, is just worried about his injuries, but he tells her to go look after the others as they are in worse condition, as the noble character he is. Someone who is not so noble is Shikimura, as he commands everybody not to move, holding the sleeping lowly girl hostage. They had all totally forgotten about the lying snake that was the literal cause of everything that went wrong during this adventure. Our boy just wants to know why he's doing it, and then that's when the snake shows his true colors, freaking out and obsessing about how he might lose his job to our MC on Sakurako's orders. Sarah tries to talk some sense into him, as he at least respects her opinion, but he doesn't budge even when she promises to put in a good word for him. They both know that the guildmaster of the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild is anything but a compassionate soul. Plus, he'd gone too far, and there was no turning back at this point. He then challenges our exhausted hero to a duel to settle the score. Talk about a cowardly move. Our hero, who's extremely tired and injured, accepts his proposal anyway. Even Mr. I just want to go home tries to discourage him, but he doesn't budge either. It might have been a jerk move, but it really is the only way to settle the score. Plus, he owes that snake a good whooping for making everyone go through all this trouble and trauma. Shikimura charges straight for him, and our boy is already on the defensive. He thinks that his best chance of ever defeating our MC is when he's not even able to stand on his feet, and what better timing than right now. He is a C rank, and his opponent is still an E rank that's on only 1 foot, no less. However, he struggles to understand why our MC is able to stand and keep defending his attacks. Once his health drops below 10%, our boy lets out a mischievous smirk, for only he knows what's about to happen. His ability, Abyss Soul, enters hyperactive mode and his mana is fully restored. Multiplied even. Unfortunately, he had faced enemies much stronger and with way more sinister intent than he could only see in nightmares. Simply put, Shikimura doesn't have what it takes to touch him, even in his weakest state. With his now restored mana, he summons the Skull Lich Lord, the boss monster that, if not for him, would have wiped them all without breaking a sweat, to the horror of everyone in the room, most especially his opponent. It is now that they realize that the person they had been dealing with is definitely not your average E-rank player. They can't even tell whether it's summoning or necromancy. Shikimura, on the other hand, is only now realizing how deep in a hot pile of mess he's in. Our boy isn't playing games anymore. The beast strikes Shikimura and makes him lose his blade. Now unarmed, he begins to panic and quiver in front of a being much more powerful than 10 of him combined. He definitely messed with the wrong character in this story. The beast draws near and looks him straight in the eye, and we all know what happens next. Hint, it involves some ass whooping. Once that's taken care of, he's now way past the point of exhaustion and can barely stand. His companions rush to support him, excited and asking questions about his ability. He can't really tell them what he actually does though. The tank and lolly girl are finally conscious again and warmly thank him for saving both their lives. But of course, dumb humility takes a stand once again. Sierra is the only one who's not happy and relieved. This is the second time he's pushing himself to the edge of his limits for the sake of other people. She really wishes he would put himself first in these kinds of situations, but since she's nowhere near his level, she doesn't have the right to say anything. That automatically becomes her motivation to get stronger. Good side character energy. The lying coward snake isn't dead though. Unfortunately, our young hero isn't one of those MCs that justify killing, so he walks out of the dungeon alive but in shame, only to meet a worse fate at the hands of his boss back at the guild. Later on, our boy heads over to the Player Association's headquarters to get his rank upgraded. He gets promoted to D rank with no complications. The receptionist notices that he's not as happy as the typical newly promoted D rank, and she goes on to explain that reaching D rank is a big accomplishment for many, and that from now on players would receive some funds and tuition discounts. But our boy has no business with any of that. His sights are on something way further than D rank. He asks her if she thinks a D rank can clear an S rank dungeon, and she replies with the obvious answer, that it's impossible. He then reveals to her that that's the reason why he needs to get stronger quickly. He wants to be stronger than even S rank players. At first, she thinks he's joking, but giving it a second thought and considering his accomplishments so far, it doesn't really seem like a joke anymore. As he leaves the building, he's stopped by a man in a suit who wants him to join the Sakuraju Guild. Just then, another man intercepts their discussion with his proposal, and soon another joins. They had heard and grown to know him as the rookie who shot up from F rank to D rank in no time flat. It's then that he realizes that it's only been 2 weeks since he first regressed back to this time. He had died so many times that it felt like he had been here for months. A quarrel soon begins to ensue between the three men, and our boy's not up for that, so he quietly sneaks away amidst the chaos. Lulu Heart had thought he'd give it more thought or at least consider joining a guild as she believed that humans like to gather in groups. But our Yukari has other plans. He's better learning from his Demon Lord teacher and solo leveling like a boss. She's quite okay with this plan, so she puts up that their next training ground would be the Lulu Heart Dungeon. Our boy is dumbfounded, but she is as serious and straightforward as she can ever be. He is sure they might be skipping a whole lot of steps, and they probably are. So many S-rank players had tried challenging that very dungeon before, and not all have been accounted for till date. She assures him that she knows the place like the back of her hand. It's her home after all. Our boy has a very bad feeling about this whole idea. And honestly, it would be weird if he didn't at this point. At the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild, Mr. No Nuts, Shikimura, is on his knees begging his boss and giving her dumb excuses that she's not interested in. She reveals to him that other players had reported that he made a very stupid decision, and he immediately denied it. What this implies is that every other person in that party was lying, including her sister, who she, in case you forgot, is very much obsessed with, like on a psychopathic level. He doesn't back down though, and insists that she must have been coerced or something, but Sakurako is already activating her ability, the Two Tails activation. Quick recap. Her unique skill is Nine-Tailed Fox, which basically grants her the powers of the white-faced, golden-haired Japanese fox. Once she activates it, she basically transforms into a human fox hybrid. She had not intended to punish him if he had air-quote mistakenly killed Yukari. But not only did he fail to prove his worth, he insulted her precious little sister to save his own skin. That is a sin punishable by immediate death in her book. At this point, the dude is desperately begging for his life, as he should, but it's falling on deaf ears. She uses an attack that actually looks kinda cool called the 10,000 Colors Dual Barrier to trap her prey in a cube-like prison. Then, in the midst of his screams for mercy, she uses Convergence to snap him in two like a twig. As for Yukari, she would just have to determine for herself if he is the real deal, which she could have done since, but I guess intelligence doesn't run in the family. She really does take this whole sister complex thing to a whole other level. Back to the Lulu Heart dungeon, which appeared suddenly out of nowhere. It was the very first dungeon to appear, and with that, mana essence was created and people with superhuman abilities began to manifest, marking the beginning of a new era of players and dungeons. People call it the Primordial Dungeon. They stand before the massive, tall infrastructure. The Lulu Heart dungeon looks as mighty and intimidating as ever. It's almost hard to believe that it all belongs to the little demon girl that's currently training our hero. The dungeon is on a whole other level than other dungeons, and it is strictly prohibited to enter it without the Player Association's permission, which they obviously couldn't obtain, so they had planned to sneak in, and he thought it would be tough. Fortunately, let's just say the security there is a little bit lacking, as the only one there is off in La La Land, taking a nap. You can't blame the poor lad, it's not like anyone has the guts to enter there anyway. It's just like gatekeeping the gates of hell. No one wants to be there, so what's the point? With that out of the way, they make their way in and pass through the gates, while a suspicious figure watches them enter from afar. Once they enter, the first floor is a corridor. Yukari notes that it's just a normal corridor. It's not giving primordial or most dangerous dungeon energy, except it's not a normal corridor. Lulu Heart explains that the first floor is actually a massive castle about the size of an entire country. If you're not experienced enough, you could wander for years and years without ever even reaching the boss room. A normal person would have started from the garden outside the castle, but she had shown him a shortcut that led him inside. Our boy isn't really a fan of puzzles and mazes, but not to worry, because his teacher has got just the perfect tool. She hands him a map, and he remembers that he had seen her doodling at some point in the past. The map looks like what a kindergartner drew, but he'll take anything he gets at this point. He is amazed that she still remembers the layout so precisely, even after all this time. It's no biggie for her, though, since she's lived there for over 1,000 years. This makes our boy wonder where she was before the dungeon appeared. A deep question indeed. So they go on, and Luluheart keeps directing him down the path. It's a little bit too quiet, and he asks why they haven't come across any monsters yet. She reveals that the path she chose deliberately avoided all monsters as they were all way past his level. Our boy's hopes are sky high as he thinks he might not have to fight at all and just waltz into the boss room, but they are crushed mere seconds later when she reveals that he will do some fighting soon enough. And just like she said, they encounter a monster soon enough. Her name is Harbel, and she looks like something that came straight out of a Star Trek movie. Luluheart reveals that her body is fragile, and this should be an easy win for him. With that, he leaps into action and rushes into battle, not knowing that what Lulu revealed was from her POV as a demon. That monster is pretty strong. He soon finds out the hard way when Harbel uses a status infliction, Wave of Exhaustion, on our MC, and he immediately loses the will and motivation to fight along with immobilization and increased skill cooldown time. Suddenly he can't move, and before he can take another breath, she slashes his head clean off his body. He restarts, of course, and is mad, but he can't really blame anyone but himself because he didn't wait for her to finish explaining before jumping headfirst into battle. Luluheart then continues to explain that Harbel has a weak body, but she has insane mental magic in return. We are talking up to 7th tier grade magic. It would be next to impossible to find someone who can resist that, for both humans and monsters alike. Our boy doesn't quite understand how powerful this is, so she compares it with human ranking. Someone who can use up to 3rd tier is considered a genius, and most S ranks can only use up to 6th tier magic. This should give you an idea of how insanely powerful a 7th tier magic user is. Yukari can hardly believe the monster he just fought is on the same level or even higher than an S rank, despite looking like she wants to audition for a low-budget alien movie. The good news is, all this logic doesn't really apply to someone who has the unique skill Lost Man. All he really has to do is lose the emotion that the magic attacks, which in this case is sloth, and he should be fine. This is how he's going to have to fight if he wants to rapidly gain souls and mana and level himself up. Meanwhile, in a church of some sort, a nun comes forward to report to a sister who's praying that a new player has entered the Luluheart dungeon. At least now we know who was spying on them when they were entering the dungeon. She believes that whoever challenges the most sacred dungeon must be a sinful soul. She is Yoriko Beatrice Irigami, an S rank, ranking 6th in Japan, in the Saintess class with a unique skill, Design Desire, and a member of the Holy Dungeon Church, rank 1. She's actually quite the looker, with a pretty face. Too bad she's talking about things like offering our hero as a sacrifice if he should make it out of the Luluheart dungeon alive. At the Sakura Dragon headquarters, our influencer friend is just busy boasting about how our young hero Yukari saved her and the rest of their party at their most recent dungeon raid. She's talking to Senzaki Kira, an S rank in 15th place in the Warrior's God class, and with a unique skill called Phoenix. He actually starts to take a liking to our boy after hearing of his feats. No diddy though. But he fears that if he's mixed up with the 100 Flowers Blooming Guild, that would mean he's got the attention of their guildmaster, a woman whose pride is so thick you could touch it. He might be in store for some real trouble in the future. His little sister, the influencer, begs him to do something, looking cute with puppy dog eyes. He must also have some sort of sister complex, because that's all it takes for him to assure her that he'll train him by beating him to a pulp. She'd much rather prefer he help him like any normal person would, but unfortunately enough for her, her brother isn't a normal person. He asks where the famous Yukari is now, and the report he gets back shocks him to the core. The boy he's looking for is currently in the Luluheart dungeon. Speaking of our boy in the Luluheart dungeon, he's kinda having a hard time defeating the Star Trek wannabe monster. Its attacks are so heavy that even when he defends, the impact alone leaves him trembling. Even with its mental attack restricted, it's still quite the opponent. He uses his ability to summon an armor knight soldier so that he can attack from both sides. The monster goes straight for the soldier and attacks it, leaving herself wide open for our boy to land a clean critical hit. After that, he summons another soldier, this time a skull knight, in an attempt to use the same attack strategy again. He knows the monster's weakness is the fact that it's very curious. Once it sees something unfamiliar, it tends to chase it down. He's aware that using the same trick twice won't be as effective, but it must at least weaken its concentration, and that's more than enough for him to score a win. It goes exactly as he planned, and even though it tries to react, it's too slow, and our boy lands another critical hit, finishing the job. He then acquires both the soul and the immersive magic power that comes with acquiring the soul of a monster with difficulty levels this high. He is proud to have been able to obtain the soul on his first try and goes right ahead to summon it. It appears just like it should, and now that it's no longer trying to kill him, it actually looks kinda cute. Our boy even tries to pat it, but just like any untrained pet, it bites him. Yep, teeth through skin type of bite. He didn't think a soul he summoned could ever bite him, but Lulu Heart explains that as of right now, the soul is too much for him to handle with his current magic power. It's expected that it shows some resistance, as souls have their own will. In fact, they're basically made up of will. Lulu Heart assures him that all he needs is to get stronger, and the Hable souls should bend to him naturally. Stronger monsters mean stronger will, which means he will need more power to control them. Our boy gulps some water from a spring and is not only refreshed, but his magic power is replenished. Turns out that the spring is actually an artificial magic spring that restores mana. He would need a whole lot more magic power if he's going to be able to use his new soldier effectively, considering the fact that keeping it awake is all he can barely do at this moment. Lulu Heart reveals that the spring was actually placed by the boss of the first floor. Apparently she loved fair fights, but for some reason, humans never ever used it, probably because of the extremely suspicious sign that screamed trap at every passage. But he's grateful for it though, because now he can fight non-stop. Nullifying mental magic, obtaining Hable's soul, summoning Hables, and using it to fight the next monster is quite the abnormal training regime. Good thing our MC is no longer a worthless NPC. He then summons one of his soldiers, an armored knight, and uses it as bait to distract his prey, another Hable monster. Then he instructs his Hable soldier to use mental magic on it, so it uses Hodo Wave, a wave of lethargy magic that basically stops the target from using skills and renders them incapacitated. This gives them an immobilized prey that they easily pounce on and eliminate in one blow. He then obtains another Hable soul to add to his collection. Lulu isn't really a fan of his method of using sneak attacks instead of actually improving his combat abilities. But hey, a win is a win. An item drops as he celebrates his win, a key of some sort. He's confused, but Lulu seems to know exactly what key it is. Turns out it's actually a treasure chest, something our hero has never seen before, which is absurd since treasure chests and dungeons go hand in hand. But I guess it's easy to forget our hero hasn't been in many dungeons since he regressed. All that aside, now they have a key, and Lulu is excited about what kind of treasure. Back to our sister complex dude Senzaki, he is still wondering what the hell Yukari is doing in the Lulu Heart dungeon, soloing monsters that are beyond human comprehension. That is just insane. Our duo of student and teacher arrive at a magnificent door. It opens and leads them to an even more magnificent treasury. There's glittering gold everywhere, as far as the eye can see. It's basically heaven on earth. There are so many powerful weapons our boy really wants to touch, but a warning halts him in his tracks. If anyone but the rightful owner of the weapons touches them, it will set off a booby trap. So that's definitely out of the question. That's enough excitement, for they must get on with the task at hand. Lulu brought him here for one specific reason, to acquire some necessary items that will most definitely be crucial for his journey ahead. After some searching, she finds the treasure chest. She warns him to be careful so as not to activate a mimic. A mimic is basically a monster that looks like a treasure box until you try to open it, then it shows its true colors, bearing out sharp teeth to eat you alive, unless you have its key, of course. With the key he obtained, he opens the chest and a legendary class item drops. It's the last elixir, an S-class consumable item that can fully restore HP and MP. Additionally, it temporarily increases maximum HP and MP, and cures all status ailments and diseases. Our boy panics over whether he's truly worthy to own this item. He can hardly believe it and hopes she won't come to ask for it back later. But our demon lord Lulu Heart couldn't even care less about that item. In fact, she has quite a few more she'd like to give him. Next is the Mana Diminual Ring, a world-class equipment that increases the wearer's mana capacity by 1.5 times its original size. Our young hero can't believe what he's looking at. Next is the Infinitus Vault Pendulum, a world-class equipment that can store over 700,000 different items. Another is the Eterno Alma, an S-class artifact that prevents weapon durability from wearing down. While equipped, the weapon will retain its form even after the most intense battles. Then there's the Ring della Lingua, a world-class artifact that enables the wearer to understand and speak any human language, but it does not work on creatures without linguistic intelligence. It's a unique communication ring tool that facilitates understanding across different languages, but its functionality is limited to human languages and excludes non-linguistic creatures. Our hero almost can't believe that he gets to take these bad boys and many others with him, but it's nothing for the demon lord ruler of the dungeon they're currently in. She would have loved to check out other treasure vaults, but for the sake of not running into more monsters, she decides against it. Honestly, our boy is more than satisfied with what he obtained, as the idea of any more actually terrifies him. Before they leave, she remembers that there's one more thing she needs to pick up. Our boy is curious as to what it is, but she refuses to spill the beans, insisting it's a surprise, with the usual mischievous smirk. A couple of fights later, our boy is now currently engaged with a lightning elemental monster in the form of a kitty cat that would be cute if it didn't want to electrocute him to death. He uses his newest soldier, a water elemental monster that he had gotten in previous battles, to defend against the monster's lightning attacks. Kinda dumb of him using water to defend against lightning, cause everybody knows that water is a terrible matchup against electricity, but he's the MC, so of course plot armor is always on his side to protect him. He then summons a Habel that stuns the enemy in place while he goes for a critical attack that finishes the cat. That's how he added yet another soul to his collection, called the Lightning Element Soul. Now there's still one monster left, the Fire Elemental monster, which appears behind him. He spots it on time and uses his water monster to defend against the monster's hot flame fiery attack. Now that's a good matchup. Water cancels out fire perfectly, unlike water versus lightning. I still don't know how that worked. Anyway, our hero and his Habel soldier go in for a double twin attack and catch the fire monster off guard, dealing fatal damage. With that, he acquires the Flame Element Soul, an element of crimson flames that is characterized by its swaying fiery hair and blazing eyes. It boasts the offensive power to manipulate flames and burn everything to ashes and excels in defense by creating a wall of fire around itself and has complete resistance to fire attributes. He finally did it, and Luluheart praises his fine work, even though in truth he had died more times than he can count before he achieved victory. It's all thanks to another one of his S-class items, a pendulum engraved with ancient runes that allows physical attacks to affect intangible beings. Additionally, it grants a special attack bonus against element-type enemies. Normally, physical attacks don't work on element-type monsters, along with attacks with the same attribute as the monster like fire against a fire monster, but with his handy item, he can land physical attacks on elemental monsters, and even spirit-type beings as well. Our boy reckons that it would be nice if he could use elemental-type magic too. It would definitely make his work easier, that's for sure. Luluheart, not understanding what he's talking about, moves to their next quest, which is defeating a boss monster. Our boy Yukari has to clean his ears to be sure he heard what he heard right. They've been struggling since they got here, and winning each fight had required him dying multiple times. There's no way she expects him to battle a boss-level monster and win. He would at least have to rank up a whole lot first, so as to gain more class abilities. Of course, once again his pleas are falling on deaf demon ears. She then breaks down the reality of his situation to him. The demon lord he's trying to defeat is far more dangerous, like on a completely different level than anything he has ever faced before. They are just way too strong, with an overwhelming power and a nightmarishly twisted fighting style that is sure to impose sheer madness on whoever is unfortunate enough to be the opponent. If he wants any sort of chance in overcoming that, he would need actual combat experience, not just borrowed strength. All she can do is help from the sidelines, teaching him, giving him items he can use, souls he can control, and magic power. But that's it. He has to be the one to actually save the world, as he is the only hope they have. It's just him. He must think, fight, and conquer to overcome the adversity that is to befall the Earth in 6 years. That flips back the switch in his head. He immediately apologizes for his somewhat cowardly behavior and mans up to his responsibilities once more. She's not worried though, since she only brought him here because she knew he could defeat this first floor. As they face the door to the boss room, she gives him a little much-needed push to step in. If he's going to save the world, this is just one of the things he's going to have to overcome. The boss is a gorgeous elven maiden who looks very calm and gentle, like my ex, but that's not the point. He is going to defeat her, even if it kills him over and over, literally. The boss slowly descends and introduces herself as Serendiana, the one entrusted by the demon lord Luluheart to guard the first floor, and she explains that anyone foolish enough to disturb the demon lord's peace will atone for their crime with their life. She calls upon the all-pervading source of light and gathers it into her staff until it shines like a weapon forged by the heavens, and she hurls a luminous ray faster than a scam link in the group chat. The beam pierces him and ends his life instantly before he can even react. He regresses 1 hour earlier and finds himself staring at the doors again, unable to believe he just got one tapped so casually, and Luluheart appears behind him with a smirk as she asks if he already needs her help, but he shakes his head and insists that he is fine. He remembers the beam's trajectory and realizes that although its speed is insane, it flies in a straight line, so if he tracks her staff carefully, he should be able to dodge. With that thought, he boosts his magic power through his soul abilities and steps back inside. Serendiana begins gathering light the moment he enters, and she fires again, but this time he keeps his gaze locked on the staff and jumps aside just as the beam cuts through the air, and though he nearly trips on the landing, he survives. That leaves Serendiana surprised as she admits that he has truly earned his right to be here, but then she adds that maybe it is time she gets a little serious, and when someone says that you just know it is about to get tragic. She summons a void-born flame that scorches the ground without light and forms a massive circle as she unleashes Empress Explosion. The fiery blast roars toward him with enough heat to roast a village's worth of meat skewers, and he knows he cannot dodge, so he decides to memorize the moment before the explosion engulfs him and blows his body to pieces. He regresses again and notes that the activation time of fire magic is roughly 3 seconds, and he promises himself that with better timing he will make it through. He dodges the luminous ray once more, and this time he summons the fire elemental the moment Serendiana launches her attack, and the blazing wall rises like a loyal guardian and shields him from the explosion, thereby leaving Serendiana amused as she points out that the elemental was born naturally and therefore nullifies fire magic by instinct. She acknowledges his clever tactic, yet calmly reminds him that his mana is nearly drained and his body is barely upright. Then flames erupt around her once again and consume him in fire as she adds that he should have used his summon more efficiently, and he dies while quietly thanking her for the advice. Realizing that he cannot spam high-rank summons recklessly, he decides to summon only at the precise moment when the spell is unleashed, and though this earns him a few victories, he still dies repeatedly to wind spells, lightning strikes, and dark magic that seems to home in like a desperate text message at 2 a.m. He notices that Serendiana's spell selection speed is slower than his summon time, which gives him a chance to predict and respond, but the effort costs him many more deaths before he even tries summoning Harble, only to realize that mental magic has zero effect and earns him another quick respawn. The long-range dark spells chase him no matter where he runs, and the water magic freezes him solid until he looks like a popsicle, and after more deaths, he notices that whenever Serendiana fixes her gaze on him, it always signals water-type spells, which is useful but also terrifying, because nothing says anxiety like being ratioed by ice. He is mocked by Serendiana as a pitiful lamb struggling to stretch a life already slipping away, yet despite the deaths piling up, he refuses to give in because Luluheart keeps watching him with a gaze that holds nothing but belief. Her faith sparks his will, and he rushes toward the stairs, dodging another flame explosion while shouting in defiance that there is no way he cannot do it, and though he dies mid-charge, he inches closer with every attempt until he finally reaches the top and declares proudly that he has at last made it to her feet. Serendiana sighs as though unimpressed by someone surviving on borrowed luck, and she asks if he truly believes this is the extent of her power. Then she releases a radiant glow and warns that only despair lies ahead. She casts the forbidden ninefold silent chant, and 5 elements swirl around her like a doomsday storm. Fire roars as the earth trembles. Lightning splits the sky as thunder rattles the stone. Ice spreads as the air freezes into knives. Violent winds slice through the chamber like spinning blades, and radiant light drowns it all until not a single shadow remains. She points her staff forward and unleashes the combined barrage with intent to erase him completely, and he can do nothing but stare as the overwhelming force slams into him and annihilates him instantly. Kira and Yumeko sprint down the street as Yumeko struggles to keep up and asks if the Luluheart dungeon is really that dangerous. But Kira does not answer her directly, and instead asks if she remembers the large-scale raid incident at Luluheart. She nods quickly, saying yes, while mentioning that at the time she was still busy working as a model, so she only caught whispers of it in magazines, and she asks if it was the one that failed spectacularly. Kira replies that it was not just a failure, but an outright disaster, explaining that 6 S ranks and 12 A ranks had been involved, including both domestic elites and foreign guests, yet every single one was annihilated. Yumeko, wide-eyed, demands to know how a raid stacked with 6 S ranks could collapse so badly, as if the boss pressed them with a never-ending combo string that no human reflex could parry. Kira keeps his tone level, explaining that S-rank dungeons are not like the others, since each one is basically its own entire world with rules designed to break people down. Luluheart begins with an endless elven forest where cunning elves and S-rank monsters stalk relentlessly, while the forest itself twists into a labyrinth that confuses even the sharpest mind. By the time a massive castle appears out of nowhere, their stamina and their sanity have both been shredded, and the raid force has already been trimmed down to 1/3 of its original size. Yumeko frowns as she processes this and asks why they did not retreat, but Kira answers that Sakurako was still inside, and that alone was reason enough to keep pushing. She nods with quiet understanding since no one just dips when someone they care about is still stuck inside the nightmare. Kira continues as his voice grows heavier, saying the strongest members were still alive, and that gave the survivors enough willpower to keep moving forward. But when they finally pushed through to the boss room, there were only 4 who stood ready. The 4 being himself, Sakurako, Kagamina Kyochiro, who ranked 12th among S ranks, and Jumoku Keika, who ranked 19th among S ranks and was the first guildmaster of the Hayaka Senran Guild. Yumeko practically shouts that this sounds like Japan's all-star team and asks how a lineup like that could possibly lose. Kira explains that for a short while, they believed the battle was even, but that illusion shattered once Serendiana got serious as she unleashed quintuple chanting while secretly weaving a 9-fold silent chant, allowing her to bend all 5 elements at the same time, and in that instant, the raid went from hopeful to hopeless, and it was like watching a game glitch out right when the boss stops playing fair. The scene pulls back into the memory of the dungeon as Serendiana unleashes 5-element magic on Kira, killing him instantly. And when he revives, he realizes that even if he summons souls that each control 1 element, it would not matter since at best he can summon 2 at once. But the cost burns his mana dry in seconds. Luluheart calls out from behind to check on him, but he answers that he is fine and urges her to keep moving while activating his Lost Man skill that erases panic and anxiety, like deleting all the apps clogging a phone. Luluheart watches with narrowed eyes and silently realizes what he has done. Serendiana fires a blazing spell, and he blocks with his fire soul while forcing his way forward, but he can barely withstand the heat before another element crashes down and kills him. Again he revives, and again he pushes forward, only to be erased instantly, and he repeats this desperate march again and again, while holding on to the belief that there must be a way through. Each death gnaws at his focus until his consciousness begins to flicker, and he realizes his mana pool will vanish long before he can even close the distance, which means he must find a more efficient approach. Suddenly, Serendiana casts water and his instincts panic, but the spell flies past him, and he is stunned, only to realize too late that it was a feint as another wave slams into him from ahead, a double strike that kills him once more. Frustration floods his chest as he keeps getting clapped by her 5-element arsenal, and creeping doubt wraps tighter around his thoughts as the death panel flashes endlessly before his eyes. Kneeling in despair, he clenches his teeth while admitting that even though Luluheart still believes in him, he cannot find a way to win. In desperation, he reaches for the method Luluheart warned him not to use. He activates Lost Man once again, this time erasing not only panic and anxiety, but also fear and paranoia, and instantly his thoughts sharpen like tempered steel. He tells himself that Luluheart must have had a reason for dragging him here since she always acts for his sake, and it cannot simply be about training or farming items or collecting souls. He admits his weakness out loud, and in that moment a spark ignites as all the battles up till now flash through his mind, revealing the truth that Luluheart made him fight precisely because he was weak. He silently thanks her, while Luluheart only winks and teases him by asking what nonsense he is muttering. Kira grips his weapon tighter as the boss room looms before him once more, and as he steps forward for what feels like the 100th attempt, he tells Luluheart with unwavering calm that he finally understands, and that this time he has found the way to defeat Serendiana. Luluheart tells him to show her the answer he has discovered through his struggles and endless suffering, and with those words still ringing in his ears, he walks into the boss room once more, as Serendiana raises her head and observes him with a faint smile. Minutes pass before she remarks that his method is certainly interesting, because it relies on a truth so simple yet so overlooked, which is the fact that every element is born with the ability to neutralize magic of its own attribute. Flames spiral around his body as her fire spell roars toward him, yet he holds steady as his fire soul shields him completely and forces the flames to scatter harmlessly. Serendiana, clearly intrigued, admits that she had not expected him to endure her fire with such a crude tactic, but he only smirks and asks if she would now take him more seriously. That single line startles her as she blinks and studies him like she is seeing something new, but he does not stop there because he suggests she go ahead and use a spell that fuses all 5 attributes at once. The request shocks her even further, because very few in the world even know she can wield such a spell, so she demands to know how he figured it out. But when he refuses to respond, she dismisses him, saying she has no reason to indulge cheap provocations. Still, she adds in a quieter tone that it is the duty of the strong to crush arrogance. As her lips begin to move, his suspicion is confirmed, because a massive magic circle forms behind her, glowing with the radiance of 5 clashing colors, and she tells him she will bury him in a single strike just as he requested. He stands firm in the face of that overwhelming force, waiting silently for several seconds before his figure suddenly vanishes. Serendiana's eyes widen in genuine surprise as she wonders whether he used perception obstruction or concealment magic, but she quickly shakes it off because she knows her mana detection cannot be fooled by such shallow tricks. She closes her eyes and expands her senses, confident she will detect him no matter how faint his mana is, since no living creature in this world exists without mana. She then raises her hand, whispering to herself that if she cannot pinpoint his location, then all she must do is obliterate everything within range. A moment later, she unleashes her 5-element spell in a devastating wide-area blast. Minutes drag by as the magic dissolves into the air, yet his presence still refuses to appear, and irritation begins to curl across her expression as she struggles to comprehend why she cannot locate him. Suddenly, the faint sound of footsteps echoes, sharp and hurried, and she reacts instinctively by casting barriers of light and lashing out with stray bolts of magic as she is still confused over how he managed to disappear. What she does not realize is that he is not below her or around her, but directly above her head, perfectly positioned with his sword raised high. Through endless death and revival, he has pieced it together that Serendiana perceives the world entirely through mana, and when he activates Lost Man to erase not just his emotions, but also his very mana signature, her perception loses all hold on him. As he hangs above her with his sword shimmering faintly, the system window appears in his vision and announces that Lost Man has expired, which means his mana signature has returned. He does not hesitate. Instead, he throws himself down with all his weight, and in midair, he unleashes his trump card, the ultimate ability that defines his class, Soul Absorption at full power, which is the Soul Burst. Serendiana turns her head just in time, her eyes widening in disbelief at the sheer volume of mana suddenly flooding out of him as if an entire army had poured into a single body. She whispers to herself in shock, wondering how a human could possibly carry such overwhelming force. A few hours earlier, he had stood beside Luluheart while discussing the nature of this dungeon, and he told her with a weary smile that, as expected of the most difficult place in existence, the number of souls he had obtained was beyond imagination. He explained that soul absorption, the skill that increases his mana and stats whenever he delivers the finishing blow, had been invaluable so far, but Luluheart only looked at him with her calm expression. When he looked at her with confusion, she told him that if the Soul Leader class truly descended from her, then the true essence of soul absorption was not just strengthening but storage, because every soul he claimed could be sealed within his body like water behind a dam. Those words now return to him as his sword glows brighter with the force of countless souls, not just the monsters of this dungeon, but every single life he claimed through regression. And he knows this strike contains everything he has, past and present. The risk is enormous, since using this power means burning away all his collected souls in one reckless blaze. But he grits his teeth and shouts at Serendiana, demanding to know how many times she thinks he has died at her hands. He has studied her spells, and at this distance his strike will land no matter how she moves. Serendiana steadies her breath, forcing her heart into calm, and acknowledges out loud that he is a splendid human, but she reminds herself with pride that he is not the only one carrying a trump card, because every magician knows the greatest weakness is chanting time, and she long ago erased that flaw. She extends her hand into the air and opens her personal treasure vault, searching for the wand she stored, the one that allows spell casting without even a second of chant. But the instant her eyes scan the vault, her chest tightens in horror, because the wand is gone. Her thoughts spiral as panic blooms. Had her vault been breached? Had some unknown factor stolen her artifact? When she looks up to see him already descending with his glowing blade, she knows she will not make it in time. He roars with every ounce of strength left in his body, declaring that it all ends here, as his sword swings down like a falling star. She throws up a desperate barrier, layers of enchanted light wrapping around her like armor. But even as she does it, she knows the outcome. His strike lands clean, erupting into a cataclysmic explosion that shakes the dungeon walls to their core. At that same moment, the system broadcast blares across the entire world, declaring that the first floor of the Rank 1 Luluheart dungeon has been cleared. Across countless regions, players lift their heads in shock, while in another corner, Sakurako glares at the announcement with furious disbelief. The system then reveals the identity of the player who achieved the impossible, announcing that this challenger has been rewarded with control authority over the first floor, along with authorization to enter the second. Finally, the system congratulates all players, wishing health and blessings upon the world. Inside the Lulu Heart dungeon, a glowing statue of Serendiana rises in the middle of the altar, while the real Serendiana fades away like a disappearing Snapchat streak. Yukari stares at the sight and screams in disbelief that he actually won, but his voice cracks as his body wobbles and his knees give out. He drops to the ground and laughs, telling Lulu Heart that he is completely drained as his soul energy and mana are overdrawn like a college student's bank account at the end of the month. The system screen appears above him and announces that the Lulu Heart dungeon has been conquered, displaying Yukari as the #1 contributor on the ranking board, and that is when Yukari realizes that the system assumes the dungeon is meant to be a group project. The system rewards him with the Rinten, a world-class grade treasure also known as the Ring of Rotating Magic. And the description explains that it nullifies all magic but requires a full-day cooldown afterwards. Before he can even celebrate, his Soul Devour skill triggers automatically and begins eating up the soul of Serendiana, also known by her long prestige name, Serendai Diana Bell Rinswheel. And Yukari nearly panics as he feels waves of souls flooding into him like an overloaded Wi-Fi router. It is overwhelming, but it makes sense because Serendiana's mana output is built like a nuclear power plant. Once the Devour process finishes, the system tries to calculate his contribution, but an error pops up saying his score will be stored until he reaches S rank, since non-S ranks are not allowed on that leaderboard, which strangely brings him relief because he knows explaining the fight would sound way too suspicious if anyone asked, especially since he borrowed Lulu Heart's help along the way. Lulu Heart claps verbally and praises him for doing well, even admitting she did not expect him to actually take down the floor boss of her dungeon, and Yukari thanks her while saying that it was only possible because of her, though he is a little shocked that she praises him honestly instead of being shady as usual. She then asks if her guess is correct that he brought her along because of his low mana, and Yukari dodges the question by asking why she even sent him here in the first place when he is only D rank, then explains his realization during the fight that every time he nearly died, Serendiana's accuracy dropped, which led him to discover that she literally could not perceive him when his mana emptied out. He admits that at first he thought Serendiana was just a beautiful woman with sleepy eyes who looked like she needed 8 hours of rest and a coffee, but the truth was that she relied on mana perception completely, and essentially could not see without it. If he had possessed high mana, he might have fought her head-on forever without understanding why she always countered him, but ironically his low mana became his greatest advantage, which convinces him that Lulu Heart sent him here exactly because of that quirk. Lulu Heart listens without giving much of a polite response, because she never bothers with fake pleasantries anyway. Yukari then asks about Serendiana's staff, hinting that Lulu Heart probably recovered it during the fight, and in his mind he acknowledges that defeating Harble and Serendiana does not mean he truly conquered the dungeon, since the ninefold silent chant remains untouched. He vows internally that he needs to become stronger, and Lulu Heart notices his grim expression, sighs, and tells him that he is probably overthinking as usual, then reassures him that he really was the one who defeated Serendiana. Yukari wonders aloud if the discovery of Serendiana's weakness was thanks to the Lost Man skill, and Lulu Heart questions why he tries to separate it from himself when the Lost Man skill is his precisely because he chose it. She elaborates that Serendiana's hidden power was called Elder Vision, which allowed her to perfectly perceive her enemy's mana and predict their actions, and the higher the opponent's mana, the stronger her vision became, basically turning her clairvoyant. Because of that, Serendiana never developed another detection method, so Yukari exploited both her arrogance and her over-reliance on mana perception. He thanks Lulu Heart warmly for explaining, then asks why his soul harvest ability did not activate with his final strike, and she directs his attention to the statue, saying, "Serendiana's soul is sealed there." He squints at the statue but senses nothing, and Lulu Heart explains that Serendiana's mana was so absurdly huge that he simply cannot detect it yet, but as he grows, he will eventually unlock soul summoning. Yukari responds that he cannot even imagine summoning Serendiana since the fight already traumatized him enough, and Lulu Heart suggests they return another day since absorbing Serendiana's mana only increased his capacity and left him completely drained with nothing to spend. She adds that there are still unexplored areas, soul recovery missions, and treasure collections on the first floor, so plenty remains undone. Yukari agrees, saying he is too exhausted to move and would rather go back home. They exit the dungeon and Lulu Heart vanishes, saying she will update the supplemental map. All he wants is a nap, but the world refuses to give him rest as suddenly a knife presses against his back. A woman's voice tells him that it is dangerous to walk alone under the moonlight, and before he can even sigh, she activates a skill called Design Desire and calls her pet forward for dinner. Yukari turns slightly and sees a monstrous eye glaring from the darkness before the beast lunges, slamming him to the ground and forcing blood from his throat as dark magic ropes wrap around him. He grits his teeth in pain and activates Lost Man to dull the sensation, but the woman approaches casually, noting that the first floor of the Lulu Heart dungeon was cleared today and that he is the only one nearby. So she has a few questions. Yukari stares at her knife and the monster, stammering out a question of who she is, and she smiles sweetly as she introduces herself as Sister Yoriko. He struggles to rise, and she even compliments his ability to move at all before commanding her pet to attack again. Yet the attack fizzles out as her Design Desire vanishes. She is shocked, wondering how a low rank with no mana can resist, unaware that the Rinten in his pocket nullified her magic. Yukari panics silently, knowing that the ring is now on cooldown and that he is restrained without access to other items, and with no mana left, he is basically cooked. Yoriko declares that he is dangerous and unleashes more of her true power, activating Design Desire again and ordering the monster to tear him apart. The claws swing toward him, and she coldly states that he will be permanently disabled, but just before the blow lands, another figure blocks it. Sakurako steps forward holding the beast's claw with one hand and calls Yoriko trash, then looks at her directly and asks what she is trying to do with Yukari. He cannot believe his eyes as Sakurako stands before him, the #1 player in Japan appearing right in front of him, and he wonders why she is here of all places. Sakurako turns to Yoriko, calling her a witch in that blunt way only rivals can, as she explains that she heard someone cleared the Lulu Heart dungeon and came to see who was bold enough to attempt such a thing, but she had not expected to run into Yoriko here. Yoriko greets her with a warm smile as if Sakurako is an old friend instead of a sworn enemy, saying that it is cruel for her to use the word witch and that she should call her sister Yoriko with a little more affection, though everyone knows affection between these two would probably melt into lava in 2 seconds. Sakurako glares with sharp eyes as she thinks about who Yoriko truly is, the holder of the holy attributes' strongest saint class, a so-called witch who secretly governs the mysterious holy dungeon church, hiding in plain sight like some anime character who wears glasses as a disguise. Sakurako accuses her of always being good at hiding her tail, making sure no one would ever guess she was in Japan, but says that today must be her unlucky day because now she finally has the chance to erase her. Yoriko smiles again, this time sweeter and sharper, as she tells Sakurako not to show her hostility so openly, since she only reveres the dungeons, the monsters, and above all the demon king who rules them, claiming that it is merely faith and not obsession, though the way her eyes sparkle makes it feel a lot more like obsession. The words make Sakurako's anger rise as she says that she does not care about faith, gods, or kings, but Yoriko messing with her guild was a mistake she will not forgive. Yoriko tilts her head and feigns confusion as if she is some innocent maiden in a play, insisting that she has no idea what Sakurako is talking about and that her only target is Yukari. She explains that the Lulu Heart dungeon's first floor has been cleared today, and Yukari is the key figure behind it. The name freezes Sakurako for a second as she asks if Yoriko really means that Yukari cleared the first floor, but then she bursts out laughing like she just read the funniest meme on the planet, telling her to repeat it because it has been too long since she laughed that hard. She smirks as she says she will let her repeat herself since it is rare to laugh this much, and honestly Yoriko might have a hidden talent for comedy, which is the most backhanded compliment anyone could receive. The two women exchange banter with voices sharp and amused while Yukari sits quietly in the corner, watching with fear and confusion, as if he is that one player stuck in a cutscene he cannot skip. Sakurako's tone suddenly shifts as she smiles coldly and acknowledges that Yukari has defeated Kei and even subdued Shikimura, who is 2 ranks above him, but the Lulu Heart dungeon is not something that can be conquered so easily, and she turns back to Yoriko saying that entertaining a witch's delusions is a waste of time before declaring she will kill her here. Her 5 tails flare as she unleashes Foxfire, launching the half-blood ability straight at Yoriko, and the flames roar forward with destructive energy. Yoriko remains calm as she activates her Albion Veil, defending herself as the Foxfire detonates into an explosion that shakes the air but leaves her untouched. She nods lightly and says she expected that level of firepower even without Sakurako going all out, before asking if it is really the time to be holding back, which sounds both like a taunt and a polite tea invitation. Her summoned monster launches its claws at Sakurako, who smirks and casts a magical shield to block the attack, telling Yoriko coldly not to get cocky if that is all she has. Yoriko orders the beast to activate corrosion, and the claws spread decay that pierces through Sakurako's shield and shatters it completely. Though instead of despair, Sakurako's grin only grows wider, as if broken barriers are her morning coffee. She retaliates by unleashing her Black Flame Butterfly Half-Blood ability, sending dozens of butterflies to land on the creature's claws before erupting into black fire that burns the monster into nothing. Yukari notices Lulu Heart herself appearing beside him, her form shimmering like a hologram as she tells him that both women hold terrifying magic power, and since his mana and stamina are completely drained, he should simply watch because this is the kind of wall he will have to overcome one day. The kind that makes every gamer stare at their screen wondering if they really want to grind this much. Yukari nods with understanding, deciding to burn every detail into his memory. Yoriko raises her hand as holy lances of light manifest around her, sacred spears formed from the power of a divine castle, and she hurls them all at Sakurako while proclaiming that people are too obsessed with preserving what they call normal, insisting that Earth has been chosen as the land of God, and humans should accept classes, skills, and dungeons as miracles instead of curses. Sakurako responds by activating her double barrier, blocking the spears as she glares and declares that Yoriko's delusions are not worth her time, before unleashing her 1,000 binding chains that wrap tightly around the spears and crush them into fragments. Yoriko smirks as she summons an even more powerful weapon, a holy sword glowing with divine energy meant to slay evil and beings caught between realms, and she swings it down without hesitation. Sakurako's chains bind it in midair, holding it still as Yoriko teases her by asking if she really thinks her tails can restrain such a weapon. Sakurako admits it is a cheap provocation, but decides to play along as she releases her 6th tail and activates Ritual Foxcry Barrier, Demon Heaven Curse, a technique that saturates the battlefield with the Demon Fox's curse, rendering everything in its reach immobile. A claw rips through space itself as Yoriko gasps in shock, asking if Sakurako truly intends to summon the Demon Fox, warning that the entire city of Shinjuku might be wiped out. Sakurako replies coldly that if erasing Yoriko requires sacrificing a city or two, then so be it, which makes Yukari's stomach drop as he realizes she is completely serious. He notices a chain tightening around a holy spear now aimed at him, and his body freezes with terror while Yoriko summons another holy sword, shouting that the vicious power of magic excites her and that they should drown in it completely, hurling the blade toward Sakurako with wild energy. At that moment, Yukari hears the system's notification as his health drops below 10% and his Abyss Soul activates, pushing him into an ultra-high state where his magic output skyrockets as if someone just hit the turbo button. He reacts instantly by summoning Harble Soul, and dark bindings burst forth to clasp around Yoriko's hands, stopping her attack. Both women are stunned as they see a D rank restrict the movements of a Saint Witch, and Yukari forces himself to stand though his legs tremble violently, swearing that even if his body collapses, he will stop this fight no matter what it takes. Lulu Heart watches from behind as her eyes widen at the insane sight of Yukari stabbing himself with the holy spear, and instead of dying on the spot like a normal human being, he forces his health down so he can refill his magic. She knows the idea is clever, but she also knows it creates a major problem. Yoriko then bursts into laughter, and her voice echoes like someone just told her the juiciest gossip as she raises her arms and declares that she has received a revelation, and with shining eyes, she screams that Yukari is her destiny before activating her luminous sanctum. In an instant, all the status ailments vanish from her body. Yukari stares, completely floored by how fast she shrugged off effects that should have kept her pinned, as if debuffs were just annoying ads on a phone screen. Without wasting a second, Yoriko conjures a holy sword of pure light and hurls it at him while shouting that her plans have changed and she is now taking him for herself. The words strike like an overbearing love confession dropped at the worst possible time, and Sakurako explodes in rage as she unleashes her seven-tail skill. She screams that Yoriko should not underestimate her as flames whip around her tails and her hair glows like wildfire. Then she catches the holy sword in one hand and throws a blast of raw magic with the other, yelling at Yukari that if he dares get in her way, then she will kill him first. Above Yukari, heavenly thunder butterfly forms, and he looks up just in time to see it shimmer into existence, and he feels his stomach sink because it is so fast that his empty mana reserves will never defend against it. The butterfly explodes the moment it lands on him as light and thunder crash in a blinding flash, and a dense fog spreads through the battlefield like the aftermath of a cheap smoke machine at a concert. A voice then cuts through the haze, steady and sharp, declaring that it made it just in time. Kira emerges from within the fog, his face with a glow as he blocks the destructive strike, and he yells at both women that enough is enough, as Shinjuku cannot survive a battle like this without becoming a smoking crater. He says that if they really insist on continuing, then they will force his hand. Sakurako narrows her eyes and speaks with icy calm as she asks if Kira truly believes he can defeat her. He simply shrugs and says that maybe he cannot beat her, but he will not lose either, and that simple line rattles her composure more than a dozen attacks could, leaving her visibly frustrated, yet speechless. At that exact moment, Sarah bursts into the scene as she calls out to her big sister, and Sakurako's head snaps around in shock when she sees her little sister standing there. Sarah shouts that Yukari is her benefactor, and she begs for a chance to heal him, her words sharp with determination. Sakurako exhales slowly, her anger cooling, and her eyes flick toward Kira as she mutters that she cannot believe they dragged Saera along. Kira answers smoothly, explaining that they sensed a massive magical reaction on the way, and called Saera immediately, because when it comes to calming Sakurako, no one else stands a chance, and besides, Yumeko and Saera being close makes it all easier. He then turns toward Yoriko and asks what she intends to do. Yoriko straightens her posture as she calculates that fighting two S ranks at once is not worth the trouble. She walks slowly toward Yukari, her aura glowing with devotion, and she tells him that killing him now would be a waste. Her body shines with radiant energy as she activates a luminous ray shift, and she begins to fade into pure light. But just before vanishing, she looks directly at Yukari and says that he is her destiny, promising that they will meet again. When the tension finally settles, Sakurako steps closer to Yukari, her eyes sharp as she says that she needs to confirm something, asking if he was the one who cleared the Lulu Heart dungeon. Yukari freezes, his gaze shifting toward Lulu Heart herself, and he quietly asks her whether he should tell the truth about his regression, believing that honesty might create allies. Lulu Heart warns him against it with a serious tone, explaining that dungeon breaks are not always the work of the Demon King alone. Confused, Yukari presses her, and she elaborates that monsters were never able to leave dungeons on their own, as escaping required enormous sacrifices or rare methods. Yet this break clearly occurred on a massive scale. That can only mean someone on humanity's side collaborated with the dungeon break. Yukari stares at her in disbelief as the revelation makes his chest tighten with unease. Lulu Heart advises him to stay cautious and keep a low profile for now. Sakurako prepares to press him further, but Yukari interrupts and firmly declares that he is not the one who cleared the Lulu Heart dungeon, insisting that he is only a D rank who overestimated his own ability. The claim shocks Saera, who can see through lies as easily as most people see through cheap makeup, and Yukari knows she caught him, but he cannot think of a better excuse. Sakurako turns to Saera and asks if Yukari speaks the truth, and after a heavy pause, Saera nods and says that it is true. Yukari was not the one. Sakurako studies her sister for a moment, then nods slowly, saying that for Saera's sake, she will let it go. Yumiko introduces Kira as her older brother, and Kira offers Yukari a place to stay for the night, saying that somehow they managed to survive the chaos together, and Yukari gratefully accepts the help. Sakurako then calls to Saera, asking if they should go home together, and Saera agrees, but keeps her true thoughts hidden. Inside, Saera knows Yukari really was the one who cleared the first floor, and a sharp ache runs through her as she realizes he is always ahead of her. Yet confusion builds as she wonders why he chose to hide the truth, and she convinces herself that he must have a reason, because Yukari is not the kind to lie without cause. She decides that she has to get stronger, not just to catch up, but to become someone he can trust and rely on, and with quiet resolve, she makes that vow in her heart. Meanwhile, within the Holy Dungeon Association, a sister rushes to Yoriko's side and asks if she is unharmed and what should be done about Yukari. The sister says that with her command, Yukari could be eliminated instantly, but Yoriko waves the suggestion aside and smiles. She tells the sister that there is no need because she felt it herself. Harble, the entity Yukari summoned, carried the undeniable magic of the Lulu Heart dungeon, which is all the proof she requires. Yoriko's lips curl into a radiant smile as she declares that Yukari is their light, their hope, the one destined to bring forth the era where dungeons dominate the world. She whispers her thanks to her lord, utterly certain that Yukari is the one chosen to stand at her side. 3 days after the first floor of the Lulu Heart dungeon gets cleared at the Japan Dungeon Association's Tokyo branch, a female staff member sits at her desk staring at her tablet where the news is literally everywhere, and she can hardly believe her eyes, as someone actually managed to clear that nightmare of a dungeon, and the whole internet is already boiling with theories claiming that the one responsible is Sakurako, Japan's golden child. But the staff shakes her head because she doesn't buy that theory. While she scrolls through the trending posts, Yukari quietly steps forward and politely excuses himself as he asks if he can request a rank-up procedure. And the woman jumps slightly because she was too distracted and quickly apologizes. But he smiles and tells her that it is fine before calmly informing her that he is here to confirm his promotion to C rank. Her jaw nearly drops because it has only been 1 week since his promotion to D rank, and she carefully explains that to reach C rank, one usually has to clear over 100 dungeons, not just a handful, as the entire system is designed to demand years of grind. But Yukari understands the shock, since everyone knows that the ranking mechanism runs on some mysterious contribution points gained from defeating monsters and clearing dungeons. His eyes drift toward the massive globe-like stone sitting in the center of the room, as everyone knows that touching it automatically verifies eligibility for a rank up, and he assures the woman that it is all right since he has already met the requirements. The truth is far beyond that, because after clearing the first floor of the Lulu Heart dungeon, Yukari had been granted the official title of C rank. His mana circuits had increased to 8, his stats had risen, his mana quality had upgraded, and he had even unlocked a brand new class ability called Soul Resonance, meaning that he can summon souls more reliably now, instead of those awkward blink-and-you-miss-it moments. Yet Lulu Heart, ever the relentless mentor, reminds him that this alone is not enough, explaining that mana circuits only convert the overflowing mana of the world into skills and class abilities, but the efficiency depends heavily on the strength of the user's soul and desire, and without a strong soul, the circuits are basically just expensive pipes with no water running through them. She tells him that the reason he always grows stronger when pushed against the wall is because of this, making him realize why she kept hammering him with pressure until he almost broke. Yukari jokes that he thought pushing him to the edge was simply her weird hobby, but when she stays quiet, he grows curious and asks why she has suddenly gone silent, though she gives no answer. The female staff finally allows him to place his hand on the stone, and the artifact glows as it confirms his eligibility, officially granting him the title of C-rank player. She stands frozen because it actually happened, and she realizes that her earlier assumption that defeating Akizuki K was just a lucky fluke might be completely wrong, since moving from D to C rank in just a week is the kind of speed that rivals even Sakurako. She silently wonders what kind of dungeon he had to clear, and for a brief second, her mind drifts toward the Lulu Heart dungeon before she dismisses the thought as completely impossible. Shortly after, Yumeko comes rushing over to congratulate him, and Yukari thanks her while she remarks that she cannot believe he has already caught up to her in rank, which feels surreal, since just last week he was a full rank below. She adds that her brother was impressed by his performance during the previous night, and then asks if he would consider joining the Sakura Dragon Guild because she believes they would give him a solid position, especially since the guildmaster is Kira himself. Yukari shakes his head and replies that he plans to go solo for now because he still considers himself inexperienced and wants to grow at his own pace. Yumeko nods and tells him that she will not pressure him, but warmly adds that he will always be welcome in their guild. Later that day in the cafeteria of the National Player University's East Building, Yukari sits quietly while eating, and through telepathy, he asks Lulu Heart if it is really okay for them to be attending university so soon after such a huge incident. Lulu Heart explains that the soul cannot just keep fighting endlessly as it would burn out without moderation, so daily life and rest are necessary. And though Yukari insists that he feels guilty for relaxing when another dungeon break is inevitable, she counters firmly that guilt, impatience, and anxiety are also valuable emotions. Realizing there is no point in arguing when she sounds so sure, he simply accepts her words, though he still feels awkward since he has skipped every class since returning to the past. And technically today is his first day at the university. Back in the previous timeline, he hardly made any friends, and the same awkward energy starts creeping back. As he eats, a soft voice asks if it is all right to sit with him, and when he looks up, he sees Saira standing there with a smile that could calm a storm. And though he tells her that she can, he becomes uneasy because he cannot figure out why she sat beside him specifically. He guesses that Saira is still concerned about the lie he told earlier, and quietly thanks her for covering for him, while at the same time Lulu Heart floats nearby, leaving him wondering whether he should explain the whole Lulu Heart dungeon situation to Saira. Without him realizing, Saira activates her Eye of Truth skill and instantly sees a green aura surrounding him, the color of guilt. But instead of confronting him, she smiles warmly and tells him that she does not know his circumstances, but she will not doubt him, and that if he ever wants to talk, he can rely on her. Her words hit harder than expected, and Yukari finds himself genuinely touched. Saira then mentions that she heard he transferred to the player education department after being promoted to C rank, and he confirms it. explaining that it is apparently rare for a first-year university student to reach C rank since players can only start after turning 18, and most people spend at least a year grinding from F to E rank before even thinking about higher levels. Hearing this, Sayara thinks to herself that she has finally caught up to him a little, but in reality, she has already been left behind again, and though she tries not to show it, she feels the gap widening. Her thoughts are broken when Yukari congratulates her on ranking up to D rank, assuring her with total confidence that she will not only surpass him, but climb all the way to S rank. And though she silently verifies through her skill that he is not lying, she still cannot understand why he believes in her so strongly. Thanks to his words, her confidence shines brighter again, and she swears to herself that she will meet those expectations. She asks if he has decided on his class and tells him that she is in class 11, while beside him, Lulu Hart yawns like she just pulled an all-nighter. Yukari replies that he has been assigned to class 13, and Sayara's eyes widen as if he just said he enrolled in a chaos cult. When he notices her reaction and asks if there is a problem, she brushes it off, but eventually admits that class 13 is composed of unique individuals picked purely based on ability regardless of their year, meaning he is about to walk into a den of eccentric prodigies. Yukari simply nods and says that there is an orientation later with greetings from his classmates, so he is looking forward to it, even if he does not understand her nervous tone. Later, in front of the C-rank dungeon called Gusion, Yukari kneels on the grass holding a sign that says, "Today's baggage handler," while a female player glares at him demanding to know what is going on and why a first-year weakling has been dumped into their group. This fiery woman is Aoba Komori, a C-rank berserker with unknown skills, and her voice practically shakes the trees, but Suji Naruse, another C-rank with the night class, lazily replies that he has no idea and guesses that Yukari is probably just here to carry bags. Not far away, Yuto Kagami, an elementalist with equally unknown skills, yawns like he would rather be anywhere else. Komori then turns back to Yukari and warns him not to dare step in her way, threatening that she will kill him if he becomes a hindrance, and though the mood is heavier than during an exam season, Yukari awkwardly laughs it off and replies that he will do his best to learn from his seniors. Looking at his 3 powerful classmates standing around him, he realizes that this dungeon raid is about to be way more troublesome than he expected. Naru summons the party as if he's going to share the secrets of the universe, but simply informs Yukari that what he has to do today is transport equipment and procure materials, clearly warning him to stay away from fighting and wasting experience points. Yukari beams happily, because being told to work less is really a pipe dream, while Lulu Hart bursts out with anger that could result in paint being stripped from walls as she questions why she even has to work with them and suggests Naruse just go to the dungeon alone. Yukari elucidates with the snobbery of one who has repeated the same thing too many times that to enter a C rank or above dungeon he must be in a party, and if he wants to raise his player rank then he is essentially not given any other choice. Yukari remembers how, before the reset, he longed to be near dungeons since he used to work part-time collecting resources in their vicinity, and where he would have traded his right arm for being in this situation today. But at the moment he can't say in public that he cleared the Lulu Hart dungeon, so he doesn't have any significant victories to flaunt, and due to this, he's relegated to this weird purgatory where his superiors are sidelonging him suspiciously. Lulu Hart leans her head slightly to one side and asks if he remembers the conditions, and before he can respond, Yukari quickly recites them from memory, telling her no swords, no weapon or equipment beyond what is on the approved list, and no soul summoning allowed. Lulu Hart smiles in affirmation, reassuring him he remembered correctly, and then reveals that today he will be fighting monsters bare-fisted, instructing him to channel his magic into his fists. Yukari feels a thrill of inner satisfaction because he has been practicing martial arts for the past few days, and this is the ideal time to demonstrate improvement, so he plans on doing so when the time comes to show the moves he has learned inside the dungeon. Aiba Kodori looks around suspiciously and wonders aloud why no individual monster is turning up. Yoto, it seems, with the hawk's eyes but a toddler's patience, asks if they will be the ones to get the glory if they happen to be successful in clearing the dungeon, and Kodori lets out a deep breath and responds that the university only really takes notice of high-ranked players with real achievements. Just then, Yoto points out into the distance and declares that he can see something. 2 golem beasts amble into view, and Kodori does not wait, charging with so much confidence as to seem that she has already won, as she swings down her sword with all her strength. The result is less glorious than hoped for, due to the fact that the great blow only leaves a small scratch on the golem's rocky skin. Naruse, not wanting to just stand there and be useless, dashes in with his own attack as Yoto fires off an aqua spear spell that thumps the golem with the force of a wet noodle. Picking up on what he sees as an opportunity, Naruse attacks again as Yukari watches from the sidelines. Yukari surveys the battlefield and notices that the formation is simple, as there are 2 frontline warriors and 1 backline wizard, but the coordination seems haphazard, as if 3 individual players are dumped into a group project where no one knows what anyone does. Their individual skills are fine, so they manage to keep together long enough, but Yukari, to himself, believes that it is basically duct tape teamwork. He wants to step in and battle one of the golems, especially to reap its soul, but he is also aware that his mission for today is to bear the gear, and poaching experience from seniors would be in poor taste, the kind remembered for all eternity. Back in the fight, Kodori growls and unleashes a strong blow against the golem, and Yoto closes in to support her with electric magic that crackles along the golem's waist. Kodori capitalizes on the chance, jumps high into the air, and comes crashing down with her Rampage Crush skill, shattering the golem into pieces. Without missing a beat, she sprints towards the second golem like someone hurrying to grab something on a time sale. Yukari estimates they will be just okay on the second one, and he suspects that if they keep this up, they will have it done in 10 minutes. What they all lack is the awareness that there is a third golem quietly standing in the corner like a house guest nobody wants. Yukari notices it and feels that his seniors are too focused and starting to look tired, so he makes the split-second decision to take action into his hands. He storms forward to the hidden golem, concentrates his magic into his fists, and bashes it square in the face of stone. His bones shake from the impact, and the golem stumbles but does not fall, so he clenches his teeth and recharges with magic, realizing that his mana control for his fists is not as developed so far as that of swords. Not wanting to leave it incomplete, he delivers another punch that slams into the head of the golem, and this time, the beast shatters into rubble. Yukari stands gazing at the remnants for a second, both stunned and silently impressed, and he makes a mental note to do that again when the next opportunity allows. At that moment, Kodori comes running and asks him if he is okay, but gasps when she catches a glimpse of the ruined pieces of the golem on the ground. Yukari quickly tries to make up an excuse, but Kodori is already crouching to investigate the materials, muttering that the monsters must have fought each other for territory. Yukari breathes a sigh of relief, but before he can slip away quietly, he is chided for wandering off alone, and Kodori sends him back to the others. He nods quickly and complies, not wishing to draw any further attention to himself. Kodori stays back a moment to look over the shattered bits of the golem, and something in her refuses to accept the simple explanation. She knows what she is looking at, and the evidence is there, though it does not work. Yukari dispatched that golem with his bare hands, and she knows no one with C-class, or even an A-class, should be able to do so. The idea stays in mind as she walks back to the others, and though she keeps up diplomatic features, inside her mind, she has already made it up. Something is not quite right about Yukari, and from this day on, she is going to watch him. The party ventures deeper into the dungeon where the air grows heavier with each step, when suddenly another golem stomps out from the darkness, swinging its arm like it wants to turn them all into pancakes. And Naruse immediately steps forward as his shield glows with iron barrier, which absorbs the impact in a metallic boom that echoes through the hall. He signals quickly to Yuto, who wastes no time in forming ice fort that freezes over the golem's foot, rooting it to the ground, and just as the creature struggles to lift its leg, Kodori rushes in with Beast Fang Flash, her blade glowing crimson as she cleaves the monster clean in half. For a second, it looks like the battle is over, but another golem charges from the side and Naruse instantly activates Justice Taunt, forcing the hulking enemy to target him while his defense spikes, as though he has suddenly turned into an armored tank. Yuto follows up by forming an ice spear which whistles through the air as he reminds the others to coordinate their attacks, and Kodori responds without hesitation by activating her Blood Mist combo, her body glowing faintly red as her health drains but her speed multiplies, and she slashes so fast it looks like the afterimage is fighting alongside her. Naruse seizes the opening with Brave Strike, his blade descending in a downward arc that smashes into the golem's chest with a force that rattles the ground, and Kodori finishes with another Beast Fang Flash, her attack splitting stone and leaving nothing behind but rubble. Yukari watches with wide eyes as the dust clears, and he cannot help but praise their firepower, and Kodori smirks as she explains that they exploited the golem's weak point, which greatly increases their critical hit rate. Curious, Yukari asks what exactly she means, and she tells him that her Berserker class allows her damage to multiply when conditions are met. like striking vital points or attacking incapacitated enemies. Though the drawback is that she can only dish out heavy attacks, which leave her wide open. That is why Naruse takes the role of the knight who draws attention, while Yuto supports from the back with elemental control, and once they create an opening, Kodori swings in for the lethal blow. Yukari realizes that the fight he assumed would trouble them has been handled with practiced rhythm as the three upperclassmen move like gears in a clock, their experience smoothing out each flaw until the enemy is taken down. Naruse inspects the shattered remains and comments that the monsters are tough but not numerous, though the issue is that it drains too much magical power to defeat even one, and he proposes retreating or taking a short rest. Yuto disagrees firmly, pointing out that the dungeon does not spawn large numbers and that they have no time to waste, which confuses Yukari until Naruse explains that they are already in their third year, and this is scouting season. Right now they are only C rank, but if they fail to reach at least B rank soon, they can forget about joining a decent guild, and even if they manage to get in somewhere, they will only be treated as bottom-tier grunts. This shocks Yukari, because in his eyes, just being able to live as a player is already incredible. But then Naruse casually mentions that Sakurako had already reached S rank by the time she graduated. Yukari nearly chokes, and when Naruse explains that there are rumors she cleared the Lulu Heart dungeon, Yukari blurts out a startled question. Naruse shrugs, saying it is only a rumor, but when it comes to clearing a dungeon like that, who else could it be? And Yukari realizes this is what the public believes. For now he decides it is better to let that misunderstanding stand until he solves the mystery of the dungeon break, because the last thing he needs is attention pointing his way. Yuto suddenly turns serious, warning Yukari not to interfere in their battles and reminding him that he is only here to observe, not to get flashy. And though Yukari is caught off guard, he agrees. They continue walking, and Yukari reflects quietly that while he has fought alone for a long time, this is the first time he has watched how seniors work as a team, and though he badly wants to collect golem souls, he decides this is a valuable chance to learn their rhythm. But then the air shifts, heavy and unsettling, as an ominous presence presses against his senses, and he quickly turns around shouting for everyone to run, though it is already too late. Golems emerge from every direction, surrounding them like chess pieces tightening a net, and his seniors freeze in shock as they realize they are completely surrounded. Yukari had suspected something was off since they encountered so few monsters earlier, and now he wonders if the dungeon is being manipulated by something with intelligence. Kodori reacts first, saying that with enemies closing from all directions they have no choice but to push forward, but Yukari realizes that his seniors are not suited for fighting against multiple opponents at once. He tells them to leave it to him, and that he will hold the golems back, which confuses Naruse, who shouts that it is impossible to win against so many and insists they retreat. Before they can argue further, a golem swings down and the ground shakes as the party scatters, with Naruse struggling to rise after the blow nearly knocks him flat. Yuto dashes past him with cold determination and says bluntly that they are leaving Yukari behind, and Naruse stares in disbelief before asking if he is serious. Yuto's eyes are sharp as he states that Yukari is just a newcomer who barely touched C rank, and if he can buy them time, then that is more than enough. Yukari dodges a strike and yells for the others to go, saying that he is good at running away, and Kodori pauses for just a moment to ask if he can really handle it. Yukari flashes a determined grin and assures her that she should leave it to him, and Kodori, seeing it as a chance to gauge his real ability, runs off saying she will entrust the fight to him. With no other choice, Naruse follows after her, leaving Yukari standing in the center as 30 golems close in with heavy steps that make the floor tremble. He quickly counts their number and realizes that if he drops his backpack, it will be crushed in seconds, so he tosses it into the air, summoning Lulu Heart as he asks her to infuse him with mana while he draws the enemy's attention. Lulu Heart appears and sighs, saying that he is still as soft-hearted as ever, but Yukari shakes his head and replies that his body has gone dull from just watching, and now is the time to stretch his legs. Then, with fire in his eyes, he declares that this is the perfect moment to collect souls. A few days prior within the Holy Dungeon Church, Kodori kneels beside the altar with her mouth moving to pray, when gentle footfalls resound through the vacant hall, and Yoriko draws close. Kodori opens her eyes with joy, greets her warmly as if seeing her is always the best part of her turbulent little existence. Yoriko smiles politely by way of greeting, stating that she has summoned Kodori here to request a favor. Kodori, ever off the wall and eager to jump into flame without second thought, promptly asserts that Yoriko can order her however she likes, and she will execute the mission even if it means giving her life up. To hear that blind devotion is pleasing to Yoriko's eyes, and she bends forward while asking Kodori whether or not she is still studying within the university. Kodori assures her that she is studying, her voice nearly bubbly, until Yoriko's voice drops to a murmur and tells her precisely what she is after. Yoriko instructs her to get close to Yukari. The words wipe away Kodori's usual manic smile, and her expression turns serious as she asks whether Yukari is a new elimination target. Yoriko shakes her head and clarifies that it is not an assassination. She explains that Yukari is an important piece in fulfilling their long-term wish. Yet as a vessel, he is still immature, his soul fragile and easily shaken, and for that reason, he must be sharpened. Her eyes glint as she tells Kodori to push Yukari to his very limit, to strip away every unnecessary part of him, and to shape him into something closer to perfection. Kodori tilts her head, confused, and asks how she is supposed to achieve such a task. Yoriko replies with chilling calmness that she simply needs to drive Yukari to the brink of death. There is no need to hold back, and if he dies, then that would merely prove that this is the ceiling of his potential. Kodori stares for a moment, keeping a serious and determined expression, as if to ascertain that she will complete her mission no matter what. Back in the here and now, Yukari stands against a horde of golems, their heavy footfalls booming across the floor of the dungeon as they charge. One of them throws itself headlong at him with its rocky fists raised, but Yukari dodges to the side just in time and answers with a single wrecking blow that breaks its head to pieces. Relief darts across his mind to see that he took it down with a single blow, but he cannot afford to gloat as another two golems charge him the moment he stands. They swing with fierce force, but he leaps out of the way just in time, and their massive forms collide with each other with enough might to blow their cores apart. Without hesitation, he pulls power into his fist and punches the head of another golem, destroying it with a shower of dust. He turns, swings again, and another drops. His movements blur as he leaps through the next one, stomping down with his heel and grinding its head into rubble. One by one, Yukari plows through the dungeon, literally punching down each and every golem that gets between him and his progress. Lulu Hart watches him, a distant observer with a face of awe. She registers that even for a C-ranked dungeon, a golem's defense is very daunting, not to mention many times higher than the endurance of some B-ranked creatures, but Yukari is taking apart golems with his bare fists. She questions whether this speedy advancement is being driven by the regret that he bore with him into this alternate timeline, that regret that gnaws with such fury that it drives him to crave power by any means necessary. To watch him move through this battlefield, she thinks that his advancement is actually very impressive, and maybe soon enough, he might even be able to graduate to learning tier magic in the next dungeon. The fight finally concludes with Yukari landing his final crushing blow, and then his legs buckle and he falls to the ground, his chest heaving with heavy breaths. Sweat runs down his face as fatigue takes hold. Lulu Hart walks up to him with careful steps and compliments him, remarking that defeating a combined 32 golems is not an easy accomplishment. Yukari struggles to laugh, agreeing that while things were fine initially, his stamina plummeted during the second part, and he required several hits to eliminate the remaining few. Lulu Hart nods and mentions that his magic faltered halfway through, and the toll on his body was altogether too indiscriminate. Yukari listens attentively and agrees that she is correct. He clarifies that ever since he acquired that specific object within the vault, his physical capacity through and through has increased exponentially, and that he has not adapted to that part of himself yet, thus making him unbalanced with his movements. He holds out his hand and recalls the treasure. The first is the S-rank Grand Strength Ring, which greatly amplifies the wearer's physical strength and power. The second is the S-rank Harden Ring, which reinforces defense and lessens incoming physical damage. The third is the S-rank Windblaze Bangle, which boosts speed, sharpens evasive movements, and enhances consecutive attacks. With these three artifacts, Yukari's base power has soared far beyond what his body is used to handling, and adjusting to the sudden change proves to be more difficult than expected. Even so, Yukari's mind drifts back to the fierce battle he had witnessed between Yoriko and Sakurako, a fight so overwhelming it carved itself permanently into his memory. Compared to the level of strength they displayed, he painfully realizes how far below them he still stands. His fists tighten as he swallows the bitter truth, yet determination burns in his chest. He tells himself that he cannot remain in this gap forever, and he must catch up no matter how much effort it takes. Yukari, however, does not seem to care about fragility, as his gaze sharpens on the path ahead. filled with the unshakable resolve of someone who has decided that failure is no longer an option. He moves forward worried about his seniors with reasoning that they should be safe if they have not encountered the boss. Meanwhile, with the three, Naruse apologizes, saying that he is going back to save Yukari, but Yuto tells him that doing that will not clear the fact that he had left him. Naruse agrees but insists on at least retrieving his body, but he is cut short by Kodori, who declares that they should head to the boss room to clear the dungeon. This leaves Naruse and Yuto confused, but she further explains that if they defeat the boss, the monsters in the dungeon will disappear, and if Yukari luckily managed to escape, they can save him. But if they go back, they will face plenty of golems, and they could not handle that amount. She adds that they are better off fighting one powerful boss, which will show their true potential. She says this remembering the order from Yoriko. Yuto agrees, and so does Naruse, reluctantly, although he hates that fear made him a coward leaving his junior, but then Yukari catches up with them, leaving them astonished. Naruse exclaims out of shock that Yukari is still alive, admitting that he was convinced he had already died, but Yukari waves him off and tells him he's just good at running and made it through by pure chance, keeping hidden the reality that he had taken down each and every golem himself. He does not wish to be conspicuous, nor does he wish to have one of his seniors turn out to be the turncoat that initiated the dungeon break, but Prudence whispers to him not to let down his guard. Naruse bows his head low to apologize for having left him, and admits with emotion that he panicked. Yukari waves it off with a tranquil smile, saying that it is all right because he came up with the idea to begin with. Yuto then steps forward, snorting as he tells Yukari not to turn into one of those robbers that run through dungeons hoarding experience points and faking being powerful, and calls him a lucky brat. Yukari retorts that if all he wanted to achieve were experience points, then he would not have bothered to fight to begin with. His voice relaxed, but caustic enough to silence Yuto for the moment. Meanwhile, Kodori pays close attention to Yukari, quietly speculating whether or not he really dodged the golem herd, or whether or not he hit a stealth class, but soon eliminates this possibility because no robber or assassin should possess that amount of raw power. And while she thinks about her options, she reminds herself of Yoriko's instruction. She realizes that she will have to keep Yukari isolated within the boss room and push him to his limit, though she fears to involve Naruse or Yuto in the plan, and thus decides that keeping Yuto outside will keep things simpler. The argument between the pair is interrupted by Kodori, asking how much longer they would argue and then announcing that to win, they should each scope out the boss room first. Kodori then tells Yuto to remain behind, stating that he is altogether too tense to be of any help. Yuto bursts into indignation, arguing that he can nevertheless speed up the cast of his spells, but Kodori's words deflate him as she points out that his spells are already stretched to their limit. His argument left flat by her logic, Kodori tells him that with Yukari nevertheless having stamina and equipment remaining, he cannot both defend and effectively engage with an enemy. She tells Yuto to take a rest and cool his head, and while irritation smolders on his face, he eventually sits down mutely while the others move on. An hour elapses with wandering through twisting paths, until Naruse finally breaks the silence by asking where the boss room is, his voice betokening both irritation and anxiety. Kumori points out that not a single monster is around anywhere, and this causes Yukari to look over at Luluheart to confirm. Luluheart responds that she can sense a massive monster close by, but the thick fog either eclipses its presence or breaks it down into pieces, though she assures him that it is close. Yukari tenses up with her words and thinks of the peculiar antics of the golem that he earlier fought, a being that had manifestly obvious intelligence indicators, and as pieces begin to fit into place within his head, horror creeps over him. Meanwhile, Yuto sits quietly until his eyes settle on a wandering golem limping in the distance, its body injured and its core weakly flickering, and he wonders if Yukari had been the one to hurt it, but then rejects the notion nearly instantly. There is no way a first year like Yukari could have been able to pull that off, so Yuto convinces himself that destiny has dropped a chance into his lap. He holds onto his key tag closely, his mind flashing to that moment a few days before at the hospital when he had stared in fury at his sister's medical bills. The doctor's voice lingers in his head, telling him that without surgery, Kinnaid only has 3 years to live. Panic had taken hold of him as he pulled out his bank passbook and found that the money he had set aside had already been taken out. He had run home, anger seething in his blood, and found his father lying lazily about. When Yuto challenged him, his father nonchalantly confessed to having taken the money. Yuto yelled that it was to go to surgery and asked him where it had ended up, only to have his father chuckle and reply that he had spent that money on liquor and having a good time. Yuto's fist had punched into the wall, the pain of splintered wood mingling with his fury as he thundered, that even if his dad had left them, he could defend Kanade by himself. But his dad had only smiled and told him to buckle down and then walked off. Now, back in the present, Yuto reminds himself that he can afford to waste no more time because taking down even one golem will be enough to send him to B rank. And with B rank, he can get into a high-ranked guild, one that pays better and offers perks that will pay for Kanade's care. He clutches his tag, muttering bitterly that the world is trash and that he can never trust anyone ever again, and then turns on his hydro spike and plunges it into the battered golem, destroying it with a single blow. Elation bursts inside his chest as he reminds himself that being an elementalist means he can take advantage of holes and can go against many attribute classes. But his glee breaks when the wreckage starts to move. The broken bits writhe and convulse as a tide of overwhelming power floods through the chamber, and Yuto's eyes go wide with horror as the dungeon boss slowly rises. Epiphany pierces him as he realizes why the boss had been such a pain to track. It had been concealed among its pieces. He turns to retreat, but before he can take a step, the boss's enormous fist crashes down and sends him tumbling into a wall. Agony bursts out in his leg, leaving it twisted and broken, and terror floods his chest as he looks up to see the monster coming. The boss is faster than any golem Yuto ever witnessed, its strength radiating like a tempest, and when it raises its massive fist to deliver the finishing blow, Yuto holds onto the minuscule keychain Kanade once handed him and mutters her name. Powerless, he shuts his eyes, knowing the end is near, but in the final moment, a hand blocks the blow. Yukari stands between him and the boss, his arm pinned against its enormous fist, his face set firm as he informs Yuto that he gets why he is desperate to level up and make money, yet requests him, this one time only, to please allow him to assist.